Good evening, folks. Tonight is Monday, December 2nd, 7 p.m. for the Londonderry Town Council meeting. I'd like to call to order. Please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd also like to please remain standing. I'm going to mimic our last council meeting moment of silence. We've lost too many people on the roads. So I ask everyone to please drive mindfully. We have some weather coming up. Also keep in mind our first responders that are going to the scenes, providing first aid and care and accident reconstruction, investigations and stuffs, and also plowing the roads so that we can get where we need to safely. So please, let's have a moment of silence. Please be seated. All right, folks, we're going to open up public comment. The town moderator has asked to speak to the town council. So without further ado, Mr. Town Moderator, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. I'm well, thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, thank you for having me back tonight. When I was here in November, I told you that I would return once we had had a chance to assess the two different voting tabulators available to us in the state, and we have since done that. And I did a lot of research following that meeting when I was here. I reconfirmed with Voting Works, which is the ones we leased and used in September and November, confirmed what equipment would be available, what we would have, and how much it would cost. And then I had a nice meeting down at the LHS Associates in Salem, our longtime partner in election equipment, including the poll pads. They spent an hour with me. We did the same thing, confirmed what their tabulators, when they're going to be available, what they'll do, how much they cost. And based on that research, while it was a very difficult decision, we've decided to go ahead with the Voting Works machines. And the plan is to purchase 5 of them. We had 6 at the general election, but the newer model, which is the one we would have available in March, processes ballots almost twice as fast as the 6 we had. So we don't believe we need 6 machines. We'll purchase 5. The reason for Voting Works, A, the increased speed of processing the ballots. Secondly, financially, it's going to cost us less money in the long run for the upfront purchase and then the ongoing maintenance. And thirdly, while I know Dominion is very confident they're going to get the certifications required in New Hampshire, that has yet to happen. So it would be, in my opinion, a risk to commit to them, and should something happen and they don't get the certification they needed, would be in a pickle. So we're going to go with Voting Works. And I confirmed with the Secretary of State's office that no action is required by the council. We're on record with the Secretary of State as using Voting Works devices, and that's all they need to know. Which one is it? Because they have to prepare the correct ballot for the machine we're using. So they said if the council is going to stick with Voting Works, then no action is required. So I wanted you to know, though, the decision we had made, and we'll move forward with that. I've shared the financial information with Justin. We reviewed that earlier, gave him a hard copy tonight. So I think another important factor in here, though, is, I mentioned it earlier, our long-term relationship with LHS in Salem. In the Dominion machines, while LHS represents Dominion, it's a Dominion problem, not an LHS problem. And I wanted LHS to understand that we'll still be a trusted partner with them. We'll have a positive working relationship continuing forward because our poll pads are provided by and serviced by LHS. So we're not losing our vendor. We're just choosing to use a different tabulator than the one that they're providing through Dominion. So with that, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the council?
Do we know what kind of timing we'd be looking at to have this be delivered?
That's a good question. No, I don't. We, in order for our lease agreement that we had with them to serve as a lease purchase agreement, I have to notify them by December 30th. I'm going to notify them on December 3rd, both vendors tomorrow. As long as it doesn't really matter when we get them, provided we have them by March, and I know
That's what I
voting
meant, yeah.
we'll have them for March, yes.
Okay.
Delivery
Remember
date.
last time, we weren't sure if we were going to get them for March, and then we didn't get them for March.
And that was the Dominion issue with the lack of receiving the certification in time, and I don't want to go through that again.
Of course. Wonderful. Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome, thank you.
All right, folks, we're in public comment.
Hey, good evening. My name is Bob Robichek, 13 Clover Lane. So I know many of you. I wanted to come speak for just a couple of minutes tonight. We're in a budget season, and the town's struggling to cut the budget. We all got our property taxes, so we know what that's all about. And a lot of municipalities in New Hampshire are facing the same thing. And I think that one of the things that I wanted to bring up, or just mention, is something I've been hearing a lot about. It was part of the master plan update survey, but also a lot of our friends and neighbors are mentioning, and that is that we're building a lot of housing units in this town, both rental, a lot of rental, hundreds of units of rental, and some owned as well. Rental brings a different issue with it than sometimes than owner-owned properties, but that's neither here nor there. And we're also having some very large new industrial developments, large commercial developments. I'm not going to name the names of those. We all know who they are and where they are. But those developments and all those housing units, and there's hundreds of them on the market that we're bringing in, are going to have a direct impact, or are having an impact, on public safety services. Police, fire, EMS, 911, dispatch, and DPW. Most of my work that I do in my day job is with public safety and DPW and first responders. I'm working in a lot of communities in New Hampshire, some in Maine and some in Mass. They're all facing the same pressure due to growth in our communities. We have to find a different way to fund the expansion of these needs, because they're going to grow no matter what we say or do, without constantly looking to the homeowners that are paying taxes now, that are just seeing their bills skyrocketing for property tax, especially for the elderly, people on fixed incomes, etc. There have to be other funding methods, and there have to be ways that the folks that are doing these developments or doing these construction of these industrial developments have to pay their fair share, because we are going to need to increase our staffing. It's unavoidable. If it's not today, it's going to be next week, next year, or in a decade. So thank you for listening, and that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Lowy. My address is 18 Lancaster Drive. And I just wanted to put in a comment tonight about the budget, particularly for the library. I know we are all dealing with rising property taxes. We are all struggling with grocery bills and what feels like an incredible financial burden on every person, whether they're a homeowner, a renter, elderly, raising a family, wherever they are in life. That's something that we can all agree on, is that this is really hard. And that you guys are in the really unenviable position, and the budget committee is in the unenviable position of having to figure out how to balance all those needs. And so, first of all, I just want to express my empathy for the fact that what you are all trying to do right now is really, really difficult, and you're not going to feel like anybody wins, and nobody else is going to feel like they win either. And so I'm sorry in advance, because that sucks. But I particularly wanted to put my 2 cents in there, that I believe one of the things that we should really make sure that we are continuing to fund, even when things are hard, is the library. Not in general, because the library is I think it's an essential service. It's an access point for information for kids and for adults, classes, community building, connection, resources and information that people need in order to access greater opportunities like job training and skills, resume building, printing, papers. All these things are things that you get at your library functionally for free. Yes, we all pay taxes into the library, but you don't have to pay anything additional to walk in and ask for pretty much anything under the sun. Since we moved to town in 2019, I have seen all of those opportunities and offerings grow at the library, particularly in the last 3 years. It's been incredible. The number of resources available for families and with children in particular is phenomenal. I'm a parent of 2 elementary school kids, and the number of workshops and classes and events and things like that the library is offering is stellar. And I always see different faces there. So we are always encountering and always reaching, as part of the library, a broader swath of the community. And I'm speaking from the perspective of a parent of kids, but I know that my demographic is not the only one that gets such a massive benefit from the library. The other thing I would like to point out about our library in particular is that I have yet to see the library spend money in ways that seem frivolous or unnecessary. Every time that there's been a budget submitted, every time that they have expanded a program, for example, with the recent access to GMILKs, the thing that gives us as a community is worth its weight in gold. It's phenomenal. And what I've seen from the library and from the librarians as they put the budget together has always been thoughtful and measured and deliberate and intentional. Not, it would be really nice to have a new chair. It would be nice to have a new chair that's not going to break and cause us an insurance issue when a kid gets injured doing so. When they ask for a children's librarian, it's not, it would be really nice to pay this person full time, although that would be nice. It's because the programming that they're offering demands greater resources to be able to support it. And that the benefits from that programming are leaching out into the community far more beyond just the kids who happen to go there. So again, I know you are all in a really tough position, and I know nobody's going to get everything that they want, but I really genuinely want you to consider, and I want the budget committee to consider, the invaluable services the library has been providing, and do your best to meet their needs, because in so doing, you meet the needs of every citizen of Londonderry across the spectrum of age and need and financial status. I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Maureen Mansfield, 10 Ross Drive. I've been living there for 24 years now. 24 years, and we still don't have water. Ross Drive and Tocquenwell Drive in Londonderry, the water is not safe to drink. I don't drink the water. We have water filtration systems that have cost me between $20,000 and $30,000 every time something happens. The Nevins, Home Depot, now you're putting more houses on Gilchrist. The water just keeps getting worse and worse. We know that this involves the EPA and the Tinkham Superfund site. But what we really need is for you guys to get behind us and say, okay, EPA, we need a date. They said it was going to be in the fall, then it was going to be the beginning of January. Now I just heard it may not be till sometime this winter. And also they're adding 4 more. There's 57 houses this affects. They're adding 4 more houses to getting bottled water delivered to their, was her latest report. So it just keeps going on and on and on. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight, and we really need to have some kind of support from you guys to say, okay, come on, Cheryl Sprague at the EPA is the person we contacted. And she's the one who told us that the meeting again may be pushed out. And it's 24 years. I don't know when the Tinkham Superfund site came into being. I believe it was 1989. I don't know how much longer. You're putting all these new houses in, and townhouses and condos, and they're all getting hooked up to town water. And most of us have been there for years, and nothing's happening. So I just wanted to say my piece.
Real quick, I know that we just recently received an update from, is it DHS?
It was from the Community Services Director at the EPA about this. I know. We saw you at the last Utilities Committee meeting. They are hoping to they're working on several documents, which include a remedial investigation memorandum, a focused feasibility study, and a proposed plan for alternatives for a permanent drinking water source. And they are looking to have that public meeting once those documents are ready. And it's expected the documents will be ready for public presentation early next year, barring any setbacks. So per our previous conversation, we spoke last time. Yeah.
Is there any way to draft a memo for the council, and the council would have to discuss this as a body, but draft a memo partner with legal to draft a memo on expressing the sense of urgency and support.
So I'm looking at Mr. Trotter as well, because
Dawn?
but yeah, I think we can probably work together.
I don't see an issue with drafting
Okay.
a memo
Yep.
expressing the council's support.
Can you can you work with legal on that, or take it if you can and send it to the council?
Yep, we can do that.
All right.
Thank you. I know, it seems like a small thing with only 57 houses, but it's been going on for years and years and years, and it just seems like the EPA is just making the process more involved than it has to be. I understand they have the last word because it's a federal site, but we need a date. We need a date. I have to stop hearing, okay, it'll be in the spring, it'll be in the fall. I really, really would like to meet a date, and I'm glad some of the other residents from the neighborhood are here as well. So, thank you.
I had no idea they didn't have water. That's incredible. That's crazy.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Troy Mansfield. That's my mom. I live at 10 Ross Drive as well. I haven't lived here for a long time. I just moved back to town recently, but she's been telling me about the problems with the water. And she has a really good heart. She just wants to be able to have drinking water that she feels safe drinking. For me, I look at things more business-wise. I know that that comes with enormous costs, and a lot of the plans that I've seen happen in different places leave us with the burden of having to hook into town water once a pipe does get run. So I'm just really hoping that part of this draft, this plan, when we talk, something can come from it where we're not left with a $20,000 bill to get town water.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. Deb Paul, 118 Hardy Road. I just would like to respond to that gentleman who was just speaking up here. He should be working at a parallel line or reaching out to Amy Russo to look into getting, they have a program. If water goes by your house, they will give you $10,000 if you have PFAS and you can prove it. They will test your water for free at the Department of Environmental Services. So I would strongly suggest that they reach out to Amy Russo in the Department of Environmental Services, have their water tested. If they fall in that they're over, they would be eligible to get $10,000 to help them connect to their water line when and if it goes by their house. It's just something I thought they should be aware of.
Thank you.
Kind of like what Bob said, I saw on the agenda that we were going to talk about the development tax increment program, and I know that's not a public hearing, so I can't talk then. And there were a couple of things I wanted to bring up about it. I am looking at the actual document for it, and it was originally brought about in June of 2022. I sat on the council and I was adamantly against it, and I was against it for a number of reasons. But one of the things that popped up about it is the exemptions are guaranteed on a case-by-case basis. If the town council deems the project provides a public benefit to the residents and communities, and that was kind of important that you were supposed to look at each one of these. And according to the Commercial and Property Industrial Tax Incentive Program under 12.2, it says the town council shall also identify the costs and determine the associated costs and proposals of the development and the project. So you guys are supposed to really take a hard look at what projects are getting these tax relief programs. But under 12.4, the town council may seek assistance from town officials, legal counsel, boards or commissions in making a determination, and shall conduct public meetings for each one of these businesses that are getting this program. So my question, since this is not a public meeting, I'm going to address to you, and I'm hoping that one of you guys would ask some of these questions. Number one, I would like to know how many developers have applied for this in the last 3 years. I would also like to know how many got them and how many were granted, excuse me. If so, who are those businesses that got those tax exemptions? And then, when did the public hearings take place? Because being someone who owns the local newspaper, I watch every single planning, zoning, town council meeting, conservation meeting, and I have saw nothing in the last 2 to 3 years. So I'd like to know if these things actually happened. Did we grant them? Are we breaking policy that we put in place? Also, if no one is taking advantage of these, the question needs to be asked. Why are we continuing this program? If in 3 years in good economy, nobody decided to do it, why in a bad economy, when we're hurting for taxes and we need to be mindful of that, would we want to give businesses such a big break and and then the residents would have to eat up that cost? So we're a town that has great benefits. We should be attractive. We have 2 exits off of I-93. We have easy access over the Ray Resorick to Route 3 and going that way. We have the airport. We have a great little spot here in New Hampshire, and it's special. And so why do we have to give away property taxes for commercial businesses and have residents eat up the difference if we're such a great place to live in and do business in? Those are the questions I would like to hear answered tonight in regards to that business program. And I really think that you have to think about it long and hard. You know, we don't want to give away the shop. And businesses should want to be here. We shouldn't have to force them or entice them to come here. They should want to be here. They should want to be a partner of our community. They should want to be involved. I have a thing with big business, and I don't see a lot of them stepping up to the plate. Okay, I'm sorry. Stepping up to the plate. And it's really our small businesses that are there helping the nonprofits, stepping up, donating, volunteering. So when you're looking at this, please answer those questions, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Something I said. Tony DeFrancesco, 1 Cheshire Court. Change it up a little bit. I just drove by the Common, and it looks beautiful. And how lucky are we to live in a town that's so great that affords the community to come together when it comes to a project. This is not the first time it's happened. It's not going to be the last time it happened. And I also wanted to point out that there are many other places in Londonderry. There are many other opportunities. There are many other things that people donate money or time to. Some get more press than others. You all are an example of volunteerism. The Budget Committee is sitting in the back right now. They're another example of volunteerism. And there are people in this town that give up countless hours and money to many, many other things. Quite a bit of it is anonymous. But this is how Londonderry works. This is how New Hampshire works. And congratulations to all of those that have the time and or the finances to be able to help. That's that. I did have to watch the several meetings from afar, and I had some things to say. First of all, I echo Councilor Faber's comments about let's try something different when it comes to the budget. Let's turn over some rocks. Let's see if we can come to a different outcome. If we don't, so be it. We've been preaching that a little bit for the past 3 or 4 months at the planning board level, and it's really, really good exercises to look at something differently. Look at it from the back side instead of always from the front side. Look at it from the middle and work your way to the edges. whatever the concept is. I think it's a good policy. It's a good public policy. It's good for the taxpayers to see that you're doing that, and I would encourage you to think about it. If it can't be done this cycle, maybe it can be done next cycle. And lastly, I'd like to remind you all, I was here 10 months ago, right after the March vote, when I talked about the report card about budgets. Did the same thing on the school board side as well. And I reminded you all that you made a great budget. The school board made a great budget. The budget committee made some great suggestions, and both groups came in with some great budgets. And guess what? Contrary to what people think, and y'all get yelled at a lot, and so does the school board, for taxes, taxes, taxes. Well, guess what? It's the taxpayers, it's the voters that added money to the budget, which caused the tax rate to go up. You can argue all you want. People can say what they want to say. They can pontificate any way they want to pontificate. But in this last cycle, and the cycles as far as I can remember, the taxpayers of Londonderry have been happy with the current level of services, and they're willing to pay for it. In addition to that, they've agreed to increase the budget, which increases the tax rate. So if people have an axe to grind, they should be knocking on their neighbor's door and saying, "What are you doing?" Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Christine Perez, 5 Leslie Drive. I just want to address the elephant in the room, and the word is impact fees. I know we had them at one time. I know there was a problem. Hopefully we learned from our mistakes, but impact fees help every department, every person in the town. So just keep that in the back of your mind, or bring it to the front of your mind.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, with that, I'll close public comment. Speaking of great organizations that do a lot for our community, I'm going to move things around on the agenda a little bit. We're going to talk, I'd like to invite the Lees to come up and speak regarding Resolution 224-31, acceptance of unanticipated revenue under RSA 31:95B, Section 3B, New Hampshire State Council of the Arts. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having us tonight.
Thank you for coming.
So I'd like to just give a quick update on the concert season this past summer. The Concerts on the Common were under the umbrella of the Londonderry Arts Council. Our mission is community, great music, and summer evenings. The concert started in 2003, so this was our 22nd season. Some of this year's successes, our goal for Londonderry's 2024 Concerts on the Common season was to continue providing high-quality music performances to New Hampshire residents at no charge while ensuring a safe and accessible experience for all. We also aim to deepen our engagement with young families, especially newcomers to our community. This year we held 12 concerts, attracting over 5,300 attendees, including a special Saturday afternoon kids concert in partnership with our town library staff. Kind of goes with the statement earlier this evening about the library. We are hoping to expand the kids concert program next year. We had a great day for that, and we had a lot of families with kids there. 3 concerts were significantly affected by severe weather and held indoors, resulting in lower overall attendance compared to 2023. For the remaining Wednesday evening concerts held on the Common, though, the average attendance was 571 per event, which is on par with 2023. Our traditional Londonderry Old Home Day concert had 992 confirmed attendees, and we always miss counting people when it gets that high. Concerts on the Common foster a deeper sense of community by attracting area residents with a shared appreciation of high-quality music performances. We strive to provide a diverse audience, including families, neighbors, seniors, and young people, a safe, positive, and fun environment in which to enjoy entertainment at no cost. The value of attending all concerts based on the cost of tickets at local venues is approximately $456, which is over $1,800 for a family of 4. Community partners include the town, school district, the police, the fire, the DPW, the Alert organization, churches, vendors, and exhibitors, and we are also blessed with a lot of wonderful volunteers, and we just can't thank everyone enough for making this happen every year. It's a big group of people that do this. We were able to fund a volunteer program this year. Folks that helped with 4 concerts got a $25 gift card to Copper Door or Cactus Jack's T-Buns, and that was a donation by that company. We had free weekly raffle with prizes generously donated every week by concert attendees and local businesses. And we want to encourage community. We had a line dancing lesson before one of the country artists' concerts, and we hope to do more activities of that sort next summer. Now, to address funding, we received support from the town, local businesses, local families, and the New Hampshire State Council for the Arts through the Arts for Community Engagement grant that we're discussing this evening. Funding is approximately 39% from the town, 19% from this grant, and 42% from local business and family sponsors. We had 36 sponsors this year, which is up from 30 last year. And we know of at least one that's already volunteered for next year and said they want to be a platinum level sponsor, which is fantastic. We are asking you to accept the Arts for Community Engagement grant money tonight. This is the 5th year that we have received the grant. Larry Casey and Steph Millville spend many hours on the application and then the subsequent report that we have to do at the end of the season. And they did an incredible job. From Lisa Burke-McCoy, the grant administrator in Concord, on the final report that Larry and Steph submitted, she said, "I want to thank you all for setting the bar on final reporting. The report is exceptional. Thank you for your careful attention to gathering relevant documentation of your events. The photos also tell a wonderful story. It's clear this is an important and beloved community event, and we appreciate all you do to make it happen every year." And they aren't here tonight, but we'd like to thank them because they're
Absolutely.
They're always awesome. So.
I'd like to thank you both and also the countless volunteers that help, the army that's behind you guys making this happen and really, attending just about every concert in person. Myself, really appreciate and have benefited from, that $456 savings of, coming to these concerts.
Yeah, for sure.
The sponsors, like I said, the volunteers, the Alert, DPW, fire, police, and everyone that contributes. So with that, any discussion from the council?
I just got to say my son truly enjoyed the Saturday concert. It was,
fabulous.
Such a fun time, and seeing the kids enjoy it and kind of ask for a better weather day. And
Yeah, we
he
hope to
certainly looks
sponsor
forward
again.
every Wednesday night going as much as he can. So anything else from the council?
I mean, I'd just like to say the ones that I've had the opportunity to go to, absolutely enjoyed. I even one in the school. I like that you did it indoors, and it was really enjoyable. You guys have done a phenomenal job. I just wish planning board wasn't on Wednesday nights so I could go to more.
Right.
But
Yeah, I hear you.
great job.
Scheduling thing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We've already scheduled some bands for next year already. The Beatles band will be back. Couch is coming back. That was a huge band for us, and they're going to be kicking off the season after the high school bands. And we have a new band, Cool Cool Cool, which is going to be really cool. And,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
Hopefully
And,
not cool inside the
Yeah,
high
not
school.
inside
Yeah,
though. We want
outside.
to be outside, hot. So anyway, but thank you very much. We appreciate it.
So I just want, if you don't mind, give credit because Lisa says it perfectly. When handling this grant, you guys have made my life extremely easy.
Well,
So
we
I
really
appreciate it,
appreciate
how
your support.
detail-oriented you guys are with everything and how
It's Larry and
everything
Steph.
is in place. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's Larry and
Thank you.
Steph. They do an awesome job. And thanks for your support.
Absolutely.
We want to have them well at you. So,
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-31 and authorize acting town manager Art Salidas to sign all documentation necessary to accept the grant funding from the New Hampshire Council on the Arts.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Ted, second from Sean. This is in the amount of $6,800 or $6,800. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you again.
thank you very much.
you.
Appreciate it.
right, new business. As I mentioned earlier, we moved things around. Commercial industrial tax exemption discussion. Madam Assistant Town Manager, your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, this is just a discussion for the council's consideration. If the council chooses to move forward with this process, there will be a first reading public hearing associated with the potential extension of this program. So again, this is for the council's consideration. As to the timing of this, this program is set to expire on January 9th, 2025. And so if the council wishes to extend the program, we would need to schedule a first reading and hearing this month to follow that time frame. So as was previously mentioned, the initial discussions for this program came about in 2022, at which time the council adopted the ordinance enacting this industrial tax incentive program. The most recent discussion that the council has had on this is a resolution that was in 2023, and the intent of that resolution was to expand the eligibility criteria for this program. So as a reminder, the program is intended to provide tax relief for commercial and industrial properties by offering exemptions to the local taxes, that's school and municipal taxes, for new and improved property. The program limits the exemptions to no more than 50% of the new and or added assessed value for no more than 10 years. This is governed by state statute, and it is also outlined in the ordinance that the council adopted. To the questions that were raised during public comment, we have not received any formal applications for this program since its adoption, and therefore we have not broken or not followed policies related to this, because again, we have not received any applications to require a public hearing. If we do receive an application, we will follow what the statute requires and notice and have that hearing. So again, for tonight's purposes, I'm just looking for a consensus from the council as to how you'd like to proceed. I can go into more detail about the tiers of the program, or I can take questions that you might have.
Council? What questions you have, or?
I guess, what benefit do you see this economically helping us and drawing people in?
So I think it's intended to attract commercial and industrial businesses. It's a tool that we have in our toolbox to attract businesses like that. For example, New Balance. Mm-hmm. This is one of the programs that New Balance was very interested in, and it is one of the items that attracted them to Londonderry. They did not use this program. They went through the pilot program process, but that pilot was designed after this program. So while they didn't file a formal application by way of this program, they essentially used it. So that's one example. I have had, a lot of conversations with potential applicants for the program, but again, I haven't received anything formal. So I view it as a tool for economic development to attract businesses to our community. There are about 20 communities in the state that offer this program, and I believe about 20 or so businesses across the state that are taking advantage of it.
The same exact program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like Sean, I know I've heard of potential pharmaceutical companies over times considering, do we want to locate in New Hampshire or do we want to locate in another state that would, offer some sort of tax program that New Hampshire as a whole does not even have available. Yep. And it looks better on their books, to have a plan like this to help them off in the long run. So at least be able to have it in our toolbox, as our assistant town manager had said, at least gives us a foot in the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kelly, can you talk a little bit about New Balance and them being a state-owned, if you will, for lack of a better way to put it, or it's through the not SBA, but
the BEA
thank
that
you.
offers
the BEA.
a program, payment in lieu of taxes program that again mimics this industrial tax incentive program as it was applied in Londonderry. And essentially does what I just outlined. It provides certain tax relief for New Balance.
Right, so essentially, it is this program through the state purchased paid for the construction, owns the building itself and the property.
Correct.
Therefore, are not subject by itself to property taxes. However, part of the RSA, which establishes this program, mandates that we shall enter into a payment in lieu of taxes or pilot to offset the tax, which was mirrored against this program, correct?
Correct. And just to be very clear, New Balance did not utilize the commercial and industrial tax incentive program. And so, no, we did not have a hearing for that process because they did not use this specific program.
Because they're ineligible.
Correct. They utilized a pilot program, which, again, mirrored this. So that had its own process, which we went through at the council level.
And so if anyone went through this process, they would go both in front of a public hearing and in front of the town council to approve. So everyone gets feedback. It's not just a done deal and it goes through. It's
correct. So if the council chooses to extend the program, it still requires an application process, again, through the council, which requires a public hearing, and that is for each individual case. And so the council has the opportunity to review that application and make its own decision for each application that comes before you.
For or against.
Yeah. Kelly, is this something you'd like to see us continue as our person in charge of planning, so to speak?
Director of Economics.
Yeah, exactly.
In my opinion, I think that it provides a benefit. I view it as, again, a tool in the toolbox. It's free in the sense that it doesn't cost anything to administer other than, of course, staff time. And again, there is a public hearing process at which time you will, of course, hear from the public, and the 5 councilors will have the opportunity to weigh in on how you view that particular project being proposed to you.
I think I'd like to hear more from the public, so I don't have a problem with moving forward.
I'd
like to hear the public hearings and see what the public thinks. We should continue it or not.
And I want to address some of the things that were said too. One of the things, I'm a nerd and I read economic books sometimes, but economics doesn't just equal if we just tax them more and give them more incentives, we're going to get more money. It means there's a market out there. They can go to other communities. 20 other communities have these. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily that we just can raise the ceiling on everything and everyone's just going to flood in. It doesn't always work that way. And sometimes these opportunities are gone. So it's got to work out for the town. And so that's but yeah, I'd love to hear more too.
I like the fact that there's public hearings, not just to extend this or not, but the public input is important. So if we move forward with extending it, we have public input. Case by case on each individual applicant, public input. Also input from the Utilities Commission, the planning, other commissions and boards that we have in place. And again, it brings us back to that public input. So I'm fine with moving forward into the next step. Do we have a consensus or any other comment from the council?
I think it's just good to have in our pocket to be able to use as an advertising piece, to have a company potentially come here instead of, say, North Carolina, where they give a lot of money away in the state of North Carolina to business that come there. And if we can at least have this one item, for them to say, oh, this might be valuable. Well, let's bring our jobs and our people here.
And to Ted's point, when people from out of state or far away, they don't know a lot about Londonderry. That might be one of the first things we're like, well, do they have something like this? And it could instantly take it off the list. And then they find out we have a lot more. And then they look into the program, but they don't necessarily use it. And just having the program doesn't mean we have to approve everything that it goes through. Right.
And just to that point, so I get a fair amount of phone calls from all over, businesses that are looking for the best place to build their whatever. And these are the questions that they ask. What tax incentives do you provide? What, specific zoning requirements do you have? Do you have TIF districts, things of that nature? So again, I view it as a beneficial tool in our toolbox for Londonderry to attract businesses in that commercial industrial development.
Kelly, this is a question for you. Was this ever sent out to the major commercial brokers in the state as well?
We, I believe, did an initial messaging when it was first adopted, and then potentially after the resolution occurred. But if the council chooses to proceed with this, I would like to improve our messaging of this, make it more accessible on our website, things like that. It is on our website. It's on the Planning and Economic Development page, the town manager page, I think. But I think we could do a better job of messaging it.
So one thing I want to just make you gentlemen aware of in the community, our biggest tax generator is Granite Ridge. And Justin's probably going to correct me, but we're close.
Non-utility tax generator.
Utility tax generator.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And we receive around $4 or $5 million a year after the exemption, or the in tax revenue. A significant amount. And my point is, they contribute a lot to our taxes. They aren't part of this program at all. And again, with economic development, to kind of go off of what Sean was talking about, there's a ripple effect. You bring a business in, you bring workers in, you bring people that are buying gas at convenience stores, bringing their kids to child care centers, bringing, shopping at our grocery stores, getting Uber Eats or whatever, not plugging them, I'm just saying in general, different stuff. So I think that's all things to consider, as we move forward. So I believe you have a consensus, and good for the next step of scheduling that public hearing, which will be on December 16th. What's that?
The first reading's on December 16th. The public hearing will be on January 6th if we move forward with this timeline.
Thank you. All right, you have your consensus. All right, public hearings. I'll accept a motion, open public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Sean, second from Ted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, transfer of map 3, lot 149, which is 13 Parmenter Road, from William M. Longmaid and Patricia L. Denault to the town of Londonderry. Mr. Speltz, welcome. Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should begin by saying that I believe that William Longmaid has predeceased Patricia. So this will be actually a piece of land that he has inherited and is working, that she has inherited, and is working with us on. So this is pretty simple. The land is right at the intersection of Parmenter Road. There's a little strip mall, or whatever you want to call it, office park, to the upper right corner. It's off the picture, and then you got 102 Parmenter's coming down from the top, and the red arrows are culverts that are in place. The one on the bottom right is actually a stone culvert that is pretty well seen its better years. There was a problem with Parmenter that was always being flooded. You could see the water on either side of it, and a new culvert was put in much closer to 102, and now that really carries the majority of the water. And that water goes back under 102. So the stream we're talking about here is the Nessenkeg, and this wetland is actually conveying that stream from just beyond Parmenter and back under 102. So it does just a little loop. It's almost all entirely on the northwest side of 102, makes this little loop down and back out. So the attraction of this gift is to provide a little better protection for Nessenkeg Brook. If this were raw land being subdivided, this would have a 100-foot buffer on it because of our Conservation Overlay District. However, the district grandfathered residential properties that were in place before the Conservation Overlay District was put in place. So right now, we're having an opportunity to put a little buffer on a stream that was unprotected before. And I did walk the property, and there's no encroachments that I could see. In fact, the neighbors that you see on the bottom of the screen there have been very good stewards and have kept the buffer that they really aren't required to keep, but they have. There's a steep slope that goes down, and so we're indebted to them for that. The next slide will show you, it's a little bit hard to see, but the red circle there at the bottom right, that's the area that we're talking about. But I've zoomed this out. You can see Litchfield is on the left. All of those green areas are conserved land, and so if you follow Nesson-Cake Brook, it goes down, loops toward the bottom, and then goes right back up into the apple orchards in town. So this is really a very well-protected stream, which is fortunate and unusual in town. So the little piece that we're talking about here is just one more addition of protection to the stream. Next slide, please. So the bottom line here is that the Conservation Commission was offered this parcel, and we're recommending that the town accept it. By doing that, we will extend the protected portion of the brook. We will be protecting the 1.3 million that we put into acquiring the Lithia Spring property. Maybe if you just go back for a second, and I'll just point that out. So the Lithia Spring property is, you see where the words are down there, just to the left of the little red circle. So that actually doesn't show up as green, although I think it probably is now, because I know that Mike just did a update on our conservation layer. But that is right there. So that again is part of this long protected corridor that surrounds the stream, and we want to do everything we can to protect our investment in that. Thanks. Now if you can go back to the last slide. And then finally, as I said, Parmenter has a history of flooding and allowing a little extra flood storage in there by protecting this land and keeping it as a natural wooded area, wetland. It's just going to make it much better to preserve Parmenter Road in the long term. And, that really is the long and the short of it, but I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Can you go back to slide 1, please? So just for clarification, this is south of 102 and west of Parmenter, that section up there.
That's correct. That blue outline there.
And what was the vote breakdown on the CONSCOM for this?
It was unanimously in favor.
Okay. Any other questions from the council before we go to public?
Is that area wet right now?
Yeah, I was lucky. I went out there before we had the recent storms and the recent rain, and I was still up to my ankles in mud. So I'm sure if we went out there now, it would be really wet. You can see from the aerial that it's basically what they call emergent wetland. So there's cattails in there and other wetland plants, but there's liquid water at the surface.
This is definitely a positive for the town. In fact, we're accepting this. We accept this donation. It's a good thing for the town. It perfects, this area of land, and allows us, like Mike said, to preserve that brook. So,
folks, we're in a public hearing at this time. If you'd like to come up and speak to transfer of map 3, lot 149, please come up. Seeing none, council, what do you choose?
I will.
What do we need, a motion or?
Vote of approval.
Vote of approval?
Vote of approval.
All right, so at this time, I'll accept a motion to approve the transfer of map 3, lot 149, 13 Parmenter Road.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ron. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, councilors.
All right, with that, I'll accept the motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Ted, second from Ron. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are out of public hearing. At this time, I'd like to transfer to old business, budget's workshop and determination of bond hearings. I think fire was up next. Is that correct?
It's what?
What's that?
We're yielding the floor to the police chief.
Okay. We'll follow your lead.
We're going to cover the 4% per default you requested.
Okay.
Give me my glasses.
That would be cool. Seriously, I can't read that.
Sarah's going to be
I'm sorry.
I said all day. Yeah.
Not a worry. Sorry about that.
I'll open it up whenever you tell me to. But I'll leave it up.
You know when you step.
Okay, cool.
Good job Thursday.
It's a tough job, but somebody's got to click the buttons.
I didn't get a chance to watch it, but
Apparently there was no audio, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't worth the time.
We will give it a few more moments for our other two
So
councilors to
there's
come
this
back.
video of us like,
no, I think in the Reverend Morrison Meeting House, they hit mute on the mics, and it went over into your meeting.
okay.
Justin, we'll just give it a few more minutes for the other two to come back.
How are you?
Justin, you may proceed.
Go ahead, Justin.
Alrighty. So at the last budget workshop, you had the town council and budget committee had tasked us with cutting 4% from our default budget.
Can I pause you real quick?
Absolutely.
So I just want people to be aware every time that we make an adjustment or ask a question to tweak things on the budget, Justin and Sarah and their team has to literally redo the budget every single time. So I want to say thank you. I know that this request here and the presentation that you're about to give took some hours to do. And I appreciate you well, I appreciate the efforts put in for this exercise and this discussion. So I wanted to thank you, both of you and the staff up in the finance department for doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So let's get into it. Ooh, this buzzes. So the request from the town council and the budget committee was to cut 4% of the budget from the default budget. That's the default budget less debt service is $42,540,122. This is about $1.7 million from the budget. Town departments were informed that they should avoid personnel cuts. 4% cut matches the level of cuts requested at the state level. The state cuts were primarily personnel of continuously vacant positions. As of today, the town currently has 16 open positions with 5 pending offers out there. And the town manager position becomes fillable tomorrow, meaning that essentially 6 of the 10 are currently there, as well as we had another one where we had interviews for the position, offered them the job, and they declined it. So we're actively trying to fill these positions. I just want to go over the default budget definition again, because I'm not sure that there is a full understanding. Technically, the default budget is not a budget. It is an appropriation. It is a dollar amount based on the previous year's appropriations, adjusted by debt service, contracts previously incurred, salary and other related employee costs previously incurred, and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law and reduced by one-time expenditures. I break out the default budget the way I do so you can see where it actually came from and that I'm not just throwing out a random number for you guys. But in the eyes of the state of New Hampshire, it is just a number. It is that 42 million everything. As it says here, I'll read the highlighted part for those at home. Instead of being an actual budget, the default budget is the amount that will be raised if the proposed operating budget is defeated. If the default budget is adopted because of the defeat of the proposed operating budget, the amount raised and appropriated may be expended for any purpose contained in the defeated operating budget. So to put this in context in terms of what the town has been trying to do over the past several years, for the fiscal year 23 budget process, we worked strongly to try and right-size general ledger lines to prevent the need to leave these positions open. As you can see from this, it's been working. At the start of the budget cycle in 23, we had 21 open positions. The start of this budget cycle, we have 15, 16 when you include the added ARPA position, and we currently have 6 in the hiring process. Fiscal year 24 budget process, we made significant gains in right-sizing the general ledger as I worked with the police chief to utilize the unfilled positions he had to help right-size various departments while staying within the default parameters. If you guys remember, this was a discussion of, holding positions, and so we were able to right-size it with chief's understanding that I will make sure that his budget does not suffer significantly. And I believe the promise I made to him was, should he find someone, we'll make sure that we find a way to do it. And this won't be the reason why he doesn't hire someone. The fiscal year 25 budget process, we still work to do it. However, as you guys are aware, I believe it was a 17% increase in insurance. So recognizing that, we took a step back and allowed that to play out rather than trying to increase everything greatly. So to give some recent history, for the fiscal year 26 budget process, on January 19th, which is less than a year ago, we issued a town-wide budget freeze due to large departmental overages. The freeze remained until the new fiscal year. On March 12th, 2024, which is less than a year ago, the voters supported all but one monetary warrant article from the town side.
Justin, what was that one?
That would be pickleball.
Pickleball. Thank you.
On October 7th and October 21st, which is less than 2 months ago, citizens came to the town council meetings and voiced their frustration regarding the current budgeting practice and demanded to see what the actual cost was to run the town of Londonderry. Citizens expressed their desire to see public safety departments and services fully funded and not to limit these departments' ability to provide safety they have come to expect from being a taxpayer in Londonderry. 1 month ago, on the budget kickoff on November 2nd, 2024, the town departments presented an operating budget for the first time in over a decade that had a proposed budget over default. Out of that amount over default, 98.45% was towards public safety and intended to right-size lines as well as listen to the taxpayers who expressed their concern regarding public safety departments being historically underfunded. 2 weeks ago, the town departments were instructed to perform an exercise to cut, showing what a 4% cut to the default budget would look like. This right here is a breakdown of your default budget. As you can see, 72% is personnel costs. I don't think anything else. One thing covers 7%, which is waste and recycling. Without cutting personnel costs, professional, contracted, and legal services, road and snow services, the town's waste and recycling, debt service, vehicle repairs and financing, and obligations such as property and liability insurance, utilities, and welfare, there's only $1.4 million left in the default budget. So, as you can imagine, cutting 1.7 is very difficult. That being said, out of that 1.4, $485,000 is for maintenance and repairs. This is from maintaining and repairing town facilities. So what the taxpayers have already paid for to make sure that we maintain and repair them and keep them up to date. The rest, the $925,000, is other expenses, which includes the tower rentals for the public safety communication system, printing and postage, which includes motor vehicle registrations, property and sewer tax bills, community events such as fireworks, all the items like that. You'll see it under Department 1542. Senior transportation, our courier services, pre-employment testing and other hiring expenses, as well as specific department expenses, things such as the K-9 and other fire department related items that are more specific directly to the department. So I know it gets frustrating when people look at the budget and they see we handed back or we didn't spend, just over $500,000. To put that in perspective, that is 1.44% of our budget. The median household income in 2022, and I apologize I couldn't find a more recent one, but was $90,845. So at year end, after all your expenses are paid, you would only have $1,305 with hopes that your car doesn't break down, nothing else happens in your house. The median household income in Londonderry was $127,946, which means $1,838. With that same mindset of nothing else happened, nothing else went wrong during that time. I included the last 2 years here, and I did that on purpose because if you look, 2022, well, it's a large number, and there were various factors. We had a lot more openings, as well as the GMR for our insurance was projected to be 2.2, and it actually came in at negative 3.3. But I wanted to put it on there because you can see that as we started to right-size the budget, we've started to try and fill the positions as the taxpayers have requested. We've started to try and provide the services as the taxpayers requested. Cutting 4% from the default budget would set us back significantly, where we would have to resort to leaving positions open and doing other things of that nature to make sure that expenses that occur can be absorbed. What is $1.7 million? As we know, it's 4% of the default. The estimated tax impact on a monthly basis for a $600,000 house, you're looking at under $13. For a $500,000, you're looking at under $11. $12.95 and $10.80 to be exact, or to be approximate. I apologize. You're going to hear from some of the departments regarding how this decrease of the budget would affect their services that they're able to provide should we continue to proceed down this path in this exercise. At that point, the Budget Committee and Town Council can provide their recommendation on what services can be downgraded or eliminated. The important thing to keep in mind here is, as I mentioned with default, if you cut something out of default, unless it's a position, you're not actually cutting default, you're cutting the proposed budget. So the only time where it's mirrored is if you're saying we're not doing this obligation, in which case it'll be removed from both. As I said, default is just a number based on last year's expenses, adjusted up or down by the items that I listed out. I believe Chief Bernard is going to go next in terms of if you'd like to proceed down this path.
Does it make more sense to provide our recommendations first to potentially save time if we're not asking for certain departments to cut?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, so after reviewing the last budget meeting, I was able to read lips and gathered there was a lot of discussion about that. So I think it'd be a good idea to move forward with that from the BudCom.
Sure, and a brief comment on that, yes, the recording of the audio did not work at the Budget Committee meeting, which was held on November 21st. However, the minutes are posted and are quite extensive. So I think the gist is there.
I was teasing.
Fair enough, just making sure people knew that.
All right, BudCom, your floor.
Okay, so given that BudCom was somewhat tasked with trying to come back with cuts, we went around the table and came up with some recommendations, and we want to throw those out there and discuss them. You want to lead the way on that?
Sure.
So before we jump, is this on the default or the proposed budget?
These would be on the proposed budget. I want to preface this whole discussion with, you are 100% right, that a quick look at the budget, you'd realize cutting 4% off the default is an impossibility. So the approach we really took was not necessarily look at the default budget and the dollars, but look at the tax rate and try to keep a tax rate that's more in line with inflation, CPI, than actual total dollars of the budget. So we took a little bit of a different approach than what we were tasked with because the task was
It
close to
wasn't fun,
impossible.
trust me.
I'll say that the town, you know, compared to other towns our size, does a really good job of, you know, how we're spending our dollars. And when we had a really great meeting a couple weeks ago, Justin was gracious enough to be there to talk us through some of these things. And it wasn't just an expense conversation, it was around revenue too. So we found, and this, as I'm assuming is reflected here, an extra $850,000 or so of revenue.
It's actually slightly more because I realized that the COSAP grant that we received, I did not include the revenue when I initially put it in, so there's another $116,000, I believe, in there as well.
I guess I should start with when we looked at what the tax rate we would need to get to in order to keep it within the range of inflation. We'd be looking to cut or fine $2.8 million, whether that be through additional revenue or cutting expenses. Again, something that would be very, very difficult to do, save for removing things from our budget that we really don't want to even have discussions about. So we did find maybe a handful, half dozen or so line items that we discussed, and a few that we came to at least the majority of the budget committee in agreement with recommending removing from the budget, and another handful that are opportunities, and we wanted to present them as possibilities of removing, and just to illustrate what a reduction in these line items would look like. So the first is the firefighters' budgeted overtime. So we did a lot of number crunching there. It felt like, just based on the raw numbers, that we're overreacting to the situation that we had early this year with overtime. Big picture, we're budgeting for full staff on the salary line, and we're budgeting for essentially worst case scenario based on the historical or the last 3 years worth of average overtime. Essentially what we're saying is that we're double counting because we have full weight of salaries, but we're also carrying weighted overtime with an average vacancy of, I think, 7.5% or 8% over the last 3 years. So we have savings that we could work with there. I don't want to get into all the numbers, but we recommended a $191,000 reduction in the overtime line budget, and with the correlating FICA and benefits, we're looking at $244,000 reduction from the budget. The other recommendation that the committee came to a consensus on was removing the warrant article for the children's librarian. Those were the two that we felt comfortable recommending as reductions. And then we have several that we discuss as potentials that we might want to have further discussion on. The first being removing the warrant article for the traffic officers. Just debate about how we're utilizing the staff now, how we're going to utilize the additional officers that we have budgeted that are currently vacant. We talked about reducing the police budget for overtime. A lot of discussion about how they've been using overtime and their staffing levels, again, to your point about right-sizing other lines. So we certainly didn't come to a consensus there or even recommend that we're reducing that line item, but it was something we wanted to call attention to. It seems, again, like we're counting, double counting somewhat there as well, but I understand that we're working with not ideal numbers for historical purposes. The other items, the new expense line for public safety, the road safety equipment, the $150,000 addition to the budget this year. Again, a possibility of removing that. Again, no one on the budget committee necessarily recommends that, but just to call attention to it. $35,000 for Old Home Day. Reduce a community service grant from $50,000 to $25,000 as a potential opportunity. And it was asked that the library reduce the overall budget by $20,000. So altogether, we're looking at $1.1 million of potential reductions or removals from the budget, along with close to $1 million worth of revenue that we found.
Again, understand that we were tasked, like you were, with finding significant cuts. A lot of those, I can comfortably say that the majority or all of Budget Committee does not agree with all of those cuts. I do think there are some lines there where we can save money. And I think Ryan is dead on about the way we were talking about the fire department overtime, and that we were kind of being doubly safe with some of those numbers, and that if we cut that line a little bit, the 191, I believe, that Ryan suggested, seems like it makes some sense, and that the overtime line is still enough for the fire department to do what they need to do.
So if I can.
Go ahead, yeah.
So the recommended is the reduction of 191K in the firefighters overtime time, and also the removal of the warrant article for the children's librarian, and then the suggested ones is the traffic officers, the PD overtime, the road safety equipment, Old Home Day, community services grant, and a reduction in 20K in the library. Is that correct? Did I capture all that?
Just with the caveat that not recommended. Other opportunities
Other
for saving.
opportunities, thank you. And what was the total savings?
Overall 1.144.
Thank you.
Now, in your total, that's also including warrant articles that have not been passed yet.
Correct. We looked at the overall assessed valuation tax rate, where we currently stood, and tried to back into where we wanted to be.
I feel like that's going at it two different ways. I mean, if you want to look at cutting what our proposed budget is compared to what people haven't even voted on.
Yeah, but we're looking at the end goal here, and the tax rate is based not only on the proposed budget or the default budget, whichever gets approved, but also the warrant articles, and so those are certainly a factor.
Yeah, I think you get the spirit of it.
So,
And we threw some stuff out there that's a little harsh as opportunities, like cutting the community service grants from 50 to 25. I think that costs us more money down the road, because those, and honestly, I was the one that brought that up, because we floated that a couple of years ago, cutting it from 50 to 25, and that idea got shot down then. And I also think it should be shot down again. But if you're really looking to save money, that's 25 grand. I also think fireworks are 25 grand. And if I was choosing between getting rid of the fireworks and getting rid of 25,000 that goes to these community service organizations, I'd get rid of the fireworks every day of the week and twice on Sunday. And I'm sure people won't like that, because
it's good that they're on Saturday.
Fair enough. That's a thing that people like. So it's a challenge to say, okay, well, where do people really want to spend their money? And if you're looking for cuts, there are some things out there that you could do, but some of them are not so easy.
I would agree with Ted, specifically on the warrant articles. These are things that haven't been adopted by the voters. I think it's, we put on the ballot, and we have a deliberative session and lengthy discussion through this budget season, deliberative, to allow the voters to make a decision. And I think it's hard to speculate if, what shall the voters approve and what haven't. We mentioned last year that there was all but one, that being the pickleball, that was approved, that had that was tied to money. So on the ballot each year, we have what the breakdown of the budget committee and the council of for or against. And I really like that during deliberative, and I wish there was more people that would attend. Probably get punched in the face for saying that later, but there oftentimes, if not all times, a community member comes up and said, Chad Franz, why did you vote in favor? Or why did you vote against that? And it allows a discussion to say, hey, I didn't support this warrant article for this reason. And I love that opportunity that it provides, not just at the budget workshops, not just at the BudCom meeting, not just at the council meeting, but also at deliberative as into the why. You're for or against or whatever. And I would echo what Sean said, that you were tasked with this, and I personally would say that you fulfilled the challenges set forth in that task. So thank you. Council?
I'll also take note that, I think that these items should go to the voters, and they should be able to have the chance to vote on them. And if we take them off, it doesn't prevent anyone to submit a citizen petition article to put them back on the ballot. And then people can vote on them and potentially then put them in place.
What's the
So there's no point of having us either, take them off the ballot or not off the ballot if someone wants to just submit them back into the articles.
But
So
Ted,
I
it wouldn't
think-
be for this year, though.
No.
The deadline have already passed. So.
No.
No, it hasn't.
No, I'm saying, but if we take it off,
No.
they have until January.
So
They have
if
until
you
the
take it
second
off
Tuesday of
now,
January.
if you take it off now, they have until the second Tuesday in January
Right,
to.
but we don't take it off today. We're just talking.
That is
I'm
correct.
just saying that
Yeah.
even if we went forward with this right now, with what they're presenting, someone could put forth a citizen petition article to put them back on.
Well, let
And
them.
then the people would vote.
Yeah. Let them.
Well, I'm just
Again,
saying,
we are not
what
we are
prevents
not
us from
suggesting
wanting the voters wanting to vote on something?
taking off all of those things. Okay. As a matter of fact, in our discussion about the two traffic officers for the police department, we wanted to suggest that we put instead of I had in our last budget workshop here at Town Hall, I had talked to the chief about one traffic officer instead of two as a compromise, and what was his thought about body cams? Like, what was his preference between two traffic officers, one traffic officer, body cameras? Where do those fall? But in the discussion amongst budget committee, we thought that it would be a better plan to put up a warrant article for two traffic officers, and then have, if that warrant article failed, another warrant article for one traffic officer, and then separately have a warrant article for body cams, and then let the voters decide whether they want, because it seems like people want two traffic officers, and let the voters decide that.
Justin, is there a way that we can, if warrant article 5 fails, shall the voters approve one?
Yep. So essentially, what you would do is you'd put the warrant article for the two officers, and then you would put the warrant article for the one officer and state that should, let's say it's Article 6 is the two officers, should Article 6 pass, this article becomes null and void. So that way, if both pass, you're not getting 3 officers, you're only getting 2. Sorry, Kevin. But that way, the concern, however, is people look at it and they think that they are getting 3. But we have done this previously before where we make one contingent on the other. And essentially, that's exactly what we'd do, is we would make it contingent on should the one with 2 officers pass, this becomes null and void.
So if both fail, hypothetically, then
Yep.
not okay.
If the one with 2 fails and the one with 1 passes, you get 1.
If the one with go ahead.
If the one with 2 passes and the one with 1 fails, you get 2. If they both pass, you get 2.
Okay.
Yep.
Justin, an item regarding the firefighter overtime that they had suggested of reducing, what is the potential probability of spending past that number that they're looking to go down to?
So I want to first start by saying that when I gave you the number, I did it on 187, not 191. So that changes it slightly, not much, but it's now a total of $249,446 in total with everything else taken in. In terms of the fire department overtime budget, as I have done throughout this entire cycle, I defer to the fire department.
Gentlemen?
One thing, just on the sheet we gave you tonight, the traffic unit is for 1 officer. I know last week, I think before it was for multiple. This week it was changed.
Thank you.
Welcome. Hope everybody's doing well today.
I am your acting fire chief, Fred Heinrich. And so the question was, what would a reduction in our proposed overtime budget, and I thought it was 186, then I heard 191. What is the?
It was 191 in wages.
Okay,
with a
perfect.
total of 249.
The numbers I initially discussed with you is 187.
Right. So now we're at 191. So what 191 gets you is hopefully 12 firefighters a day. Hopefully. We proposed that is about $50,000 more than what we had suggested to go from 12 to 13. So today it might be 13, tomorrow it might be 12. It really depends on the staffing for the day. One of our biggest problems is that when we staff, certain people have certain responsibilities. So if a lieutenant calls out sick, I am not going to staff a fire engine with 2 firefighters. I am going to hire a lieutenant for their safety and for the safety of the community. So by reducing my overtime, I lose that flexibility. One of the things that, and I appreciate the document you sent me, one of the things that you have to remember is we consistently drop down. So last year we dropped down in February of 24, this year, February 24, but last fiscal budget. The year before we dropped down to 11 in January. And then beyond that, it gets wonky with COVID. There are days that we dropped down. There are days that we overstaffed. It really depended on what the current thought process was for how to deal with COVID. And that is where we run into the problem with our numbers. Is last year, as all of our budgets were a little wonky, money didn't get spent and on things that needed to get spent. That had an effect in the fire department, it had an effect on every budget. And we are trying to spend that money to get what we need. One of the effects of that is we are drastically drawing down on our capital funds because there's no other way to get money for things that are longer term items. In the past, we mentioned this before, we would be able to purchase gear out of our budget. We are no longer able to do that. So right off the bat, when we replace firefighters' gear, which we replace every 10 years, they have 2 sets for their own safety. That takes a huge chunk out of our budget.
And we replace it because it expires, not because we just arbitrarily picked 10 years. That's the life of the gear. It has to go out the door. They can't wear it. They wear expired gear. We're all liable.
And that's if we're lucky. Because of the changes in cancer and carcinogens, after a fire, we wash our gear. We wash our gear a lot. And that wear and tear on washing the gear affects the lifespan of the gear as well. So we are replacing gear before 10 years on a lot of people because they use it.
And I'm sure you've all seen firefighting gear has PFOAs in it, old firefighting gear. I say old, not that old. We have plenty of guys wearing gear that has PFOAs in it because it's still within its expiration dates. Now, manufacturers, because of the state, have been required to stop manufacturing it that way, which lessens the lifespan of the gear because, kind of like asbestos, PFOAs made it a better product, right? We don't have that anymore. With that being said, that is also increased the cost of the gear. That's part of the gear increase, is to make it.
I don't think there's anything that we own costs less.
But just to give you a perspective on gear, that's part of the reason our capital reserve funds go down is because we're purchasing more gear to replace gear that's going out, and the cost of it has gone up to make it safer for the environment, for the members wearing it.
So projecting has been difficult for us for the second half of the year. One of the things that we have done, and this is the first time in a long time, and I've been here a while, is we will be at full staff on January 6th. We will have no vacancies, and we will have some kind of stability for our people, which is important. The budget presented with what we estimate, and I don't lie to you, this is an estimate, but what I am telling you is that this is what we guess will be the best estimate.
Last year we had a budget, and as you can tell, we were a little bit over. And this year, I can tell you that we're going to be struggling to maintain 12 people. So the town council has worked with us. You guys have worked with us. But I think what the important two parts about this is the citizens believe that they got 13 firefighters this year. And as of today, we will have the first shift of 13 on Thursday?
Yes.
On Thursday, having physically 13 people on duty. And that's only for half a shift because there's other stuff going on. But that'll be our first effort at 13. I guess the ask that I am asking is to trust us to manage our budget and estimate what our budget is. If we do underspend our overtime budget, we will know, unfortunately, sometime around, for the 26 budget, we'll know sometime around this time where we're tracking, but we won't even know. And we're projecting 18 months and ahead.
You won't be able to.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason we did the freeze last year is should an emergency happen, we're not going to tell you, no, you can't do that.
So I won't even be able to tell you if our estimate is even close, even for the next budget cycle, which puts us further behind for the next budget cycle. I guess it really comes down to, are we operating a fire department at 12 or are we operating at 13? The reason we sold 13 last year and the citizens agreed with 13 was because paramedics are a limited supply. Currently, they're not negotiations, so I can say things, but our contract for the firefighters is stale. There are agencies, Nashua and Hudson in particular, that pay quite well. I would not be surprised if we lost a firefighter just for pure economics of going to another department. We do really well. We hire a lot of people that are invested in Londonderry. We hire really good people, just like the police department. That's why it took us so long to get here. But I can't tell you what that real overtime number is going to be other than our guess. So it's either intentionally staff us at 12, we'll go with 12, we'll try to get 13, we'll up staff when we get closer to March, April, May, when we have a better idea, but we still won't have a good projection for the next year.
So, Chief.
Yeah.
You guys probably didn't come here prepared for this question. How often are you guys, you may know this off the top of your head, split up in multiple directions and you need to be calling in more people?
Well, let me say at 8:30 this morning, we did a staffing recall because we had nobody available. I can give you the mutual aid numbers. The best thing about the mutual aid is our partners in mutual aid have been generous. We use mutual aid far more than we provide mutual aid. And as long as their budgets can withstand that, that will help us. But I don't blame them for saying, hey, this is painful to us as an organization as well. And their staffing is either equal to or less than ours, and they're providing as much as they can provide. So we have communities like, we had a incident the other day at Stonyfield. We had Merrimack in there. Merrimack staffing is equal to ours, so they dropped a piece to come to us. We had Bedford. Bedford staffing is lower than ours. We had we had Wyndham. Their staffing is dramatically lower than ours. We had Hudson, which is slightly lower than ours. We had Litchfield, which is a volunteer department, and they provided resources. So when we have an incident, our neighbors are helping us out, and we need to be available for our people, but for them as well.
Now, say, for example, if an incident of large scale happened and we were all tied up everywhere, how much longer of a delay would that be because they can't get to a citizen in town who needs our help because we dropped down in finances and weren't able to pull in the right number of people to help?
So it depends on the incident. If it's an incident like, let's say we have another ice storm and the entire region is affected, then that delay is going to be huge because all of our partners are equally burdened by that event. If it is isolated event like we have, I-93 becomes a skating rink, You know, that's going to affect us, Derry, Wyndham, Manchester, Salem. So we can bring in some of our partners that are a little further out. But it takes time, and it really depends on weather conditions. It depends on time of day. It depends on how busy our partners are. So I wish I could give you an answer, but if you just Google the travel time from their station to our station, that's the bare minimum.
Yeah, it depends on location. Right in the north part of Londonderry, we call on Bedford a lot. Well, for Bedford to get to Londonderry, just to get to the town line is a little bit of a run, right? Now add them up to Auburn Road, or even to Rockingham Road, to Giovanni's, let's say. It's a little bit of a run for them to get there, but they're the next closest available resource.
So throwing out here a hypothetical, if someone's having a heart attack in town, would mutual aid be able to get there in time?
Well,
I don't know that we could get there in time. I don't want to tell you, I don't want to scare you and say they won't. I don't know.
I want to be careful.
How many times in the last 3 years have we not gotten there in time?
So
I'm just trying to look
on
historical
heart attack, Sean?
instead of hypothetical instead historical instead of hypothetical.
Or there's fires.
I mean,
gotten there in fires at times.
So I'm just trying to see how often does this actually happen. That's what I'm trying to get at.
If you wanted us to pull the data, we could. I can tell you that with the utmost confidence, if somebody is having a heart attack or goes into cardiac arrest, the save percentage is a lot lower than the not safe percentage.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, in general.
Those two. If we're talking about that specific medical incident, those two kind of.
Several years ago, we also did put AEDs in all of our town vehicles in partnership with the fire department.
So we have AEDs in 2 of the highway departments, the 2 supervisors, maybe 3 supervisors. We have them in 6 of the police officers, and as you've heard, our staffing for the police department can drop down to 3 and 1, so that's all 4 of those should have AEDs in them. We have them in a lot of community settings. We have them in the soccer fields. We have them in the baseball fields. The school has them over on their fields. We have them at the town common all the time. Every building has one. 911 does a great job with telling people how to do CPR, which helps. But I don't want to hang my hat on something that really has a lot of factors involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of uncontrolled.
I mean, I can.
Yeah, that's a bad example to go down. We shouldn't have got stuck on that specific.
Right, I was at West Road when that situation happened, watching my kid play soccer, and so I was there very quickly. And actually, our response time was slower because we were dealing with a chimney fire. Mm-hmm. But I was there, right? And I'm a trained professional, and so. But that's why I don't know if that's the best.
Yeah. No, so the real reason I asked the question is because if someone watching at home,
Mm-hmm.
I think, oh, are we in danger right now? And, over the last 3 years, I don't know of any where you guys have not responded and taken care of this community. And I just don't want them to feel like, oh, they haven't.
Sean, I will say this. I believe that question is in the eye of the beholder. And I say that because if you've never had 911 come to your house, you may look at it differently than somebody who has had something in their life happen that made them feel like something was terrible or destructive was going on. So that's where I say I think it's in the eye of the beholder. If we look at statistics and we look at numbers, our staffing is not where it should be for the size of the community that we are and the facilities and the amount of people we have. That's factual information. With that being said, we can't just throw money to adding 14 or 15 or 16 people. That's so I don't know if answering that question is the best because it's not proportional to what we should be staffed at and what we have, right? I think we have to look at what we can do with the best of what we have.
And one thing I always appreciate about all of our first responders, PD, and our town staff is doing what they can the most with what they have. And, we can create any hypothetical situation. We had a discussion about a business coming in up in the north sector and losing 9 to 11 first responders. All hypothetical, and to your point, if you're in a crisis and you're in need, there's never a fast enough response time. And I can only imagine for those that are going through those on a faster rate than others. And
we often get told that it took us a certain amount of time to get to a call, right? And I don't see it on Facebook or online because I'm not online. for that reason, but I'm told of this. And then we go back and look at the times, and the times are vastly different, and they're usually shorter. But in that person's time of need, it seemed a lot longer. And so I think, unfortunately, that is the issue with trying to look at it like in this way.
But what I can tell you is that in 4 minutes, if we have a perfect response time, we don't hit a lot of in 4 minutes. In 10 minutes, if nobody's doing CPR on somebody, their chances are literally zero. We give about 10% chance of survival decrease for every minute. So that I can tell you. We can find out what our response times are. I can also tell you that the reason we presented the 13 was because paramedics are less and less. We haven't hired a paramedic since David Bork, which was 2.5 years ago.
Yes.
Because nobody wants to work for what we pay. I mean, that's really what it is. So by freeing up a paramedic that can respond to any emergency, even if the other ambulances are busy or engine companies aren't busy, that gives us a force multiplier of a paramedic that can do something with an AED and a police officer that arrives with an AED. So the 13 that we presented and for the Warren article was a legitimate concern for our responses. And I don't think that was a bad choice in our behavior, because we need to be more dynamic when it comes to calls. Having just 2 paramedics on the 2 primary ambulances doesn't allow a third ambulance to have a paramedic if it needs to. That fly car paramedic intercept allows a little more flexibility. And it also allows a third person to transport in an ambulance without taking an engine company out of service, which is something that has happened quite often. So I guess what I'm saying is that people are what makes the fire department work. And the people that we have are really good, but they can only do so much, and they do give 110%. And they give 110% to the community. They do events for the community. They are involved in the community, and they are vested us, and they turn around quickly at hospitals. If they know we're busy, they try to get back in service as quickly as possible.
So I kind of want to steer us a little bit back on task.
Okay.
So the discussion was, and thank you both, the overtime, cutting the overtime. Justin had said 187. BudCom proposed 191.
Whoa, no.
I'm sorry.
No.
Those were both our numbers. It was just
Thank you.
Nope, that was not met.
Thank you.
Can I also make a
stand
thank you?
corrected.
Can I say thank you? Am I allowed to? Ryan, I want to thank you, because I read this, and it may not have taken you very long, because this is what you do, but to me it seems like it might have taken you a long time to put this document together that you sent us, and I appreciate it, right? And I think that you looked at, your approach to this was a sound approach, looking at it from the financial way of our numbers over the last 10 years, because however many years you looked at it, but in the last 10 years we've been in default and we haven't been fully staffed, right? And we looked at it from the other side. But I just want you to know that it's not lost on us, the effort and energy that you put in to figure this out. And it may not have been a lot of energy for you, because this is what you do for a living, but if it was, I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
So again, I correct my previous statement. Our finance director did not suggest that at all.
No.
Both of those numbers were what was the word?
I misspoke earlier. I was
Opportunities for
opportunities. Thank
The
you.
number back and forth has been...
So back to the overtime. What cause and effect if there was a $191,000 cut in overtime? What effect would that have?
I guess a good way that would be is how many hours would that be cutting off?
Can I ask that a different way?
Please.
So the increase in the fire department overtime line, if I remember correctly, is in the range of $351K.
320 is what I have, but it could be
320.
It could be wrong.
Okay, and that 320 was a number that you guys came up with based on how much overtime it would be to stay at 13 all the time, right?
Yes.
You also had a number for 12 at
Yes.
the original presentation. Do we remember what that number was, or do you have that?
That number was an increase of 147,700, and this proposed decrease of 191
puts you below that.
Puts us below that.
Okay. So increasing the line from what it was last year by 320K theoretically gets you 13 on every shift, and increasing by 150 gets you 12 on every shift.
Yes.
Ryan's argument is that there's some fluff in those numbers based on the fact that they account for you not being fully staffed, right? So if you're not fully staffed, then you're saving whatever on the position that's not filled, which helps offset some of that overtime use, right? And I'm not suggesting that you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Let me speak on that, Patrick, because we were truly trying to give a number that we would not be back here next year saying we dropped staff. We did not promise what we did, And if we have extra overtime money, we are not going to spend it on something else that is not overtime. One of the things that you may have noticed over the years is different chiefs, different budgets, different processes would do different things with numbers. So let's say you had a printing budget of 800 and you had a stamp budget of 800 and you needed $1,600 worth of printing. Well, they would assign 800 to the printing, 800 to the stamps, and then nobody at the town would say, oh, you didn't need enough money for stamps, so we're not going to cut that. So at one point we changed to, okay, we're going to put 1,600 on the printing. Unfortunately, we had to cut the 800 on the stamps, and then that looks like low fruit for when it comes to budget selection, saying, well, you didn't need the stamp money. Well, we didn't have the stamp money. So it's not that we didn't have the money, it's that we chose not to, and we have lines that are clearly overspent to represent what our actual expenses are. I mean, it would be easy for us just to give you a budget at the end of the year, we'd move stuff around and say, hey, look, every line is perfectly spent magically. And that's not our intent. Our intent to be as straightforward with you as possible. This budget may have extra overtime money. And I'm telling you that if we have extra overtime money, we are not going to spend it. I mean, there's a consequence for that, being that the taxpayers paid for that money, but they're going back into undesignated fund. But Justin was talking about our margin. I don't want to get to June and say, oh my God, if somebody calls out sick tomorrow, we're going to go over budget. I want to have a little bit of fluff in the end of the year in case something happens on a fire at the very last week of our budget. If I'm budgeting it too closely.
Fred, if you don't mind, can I jump in here? This is one of those areas that I'm jealous of the school district, that they're able to tell their school board come, Bob, are you here? February, March, what UFB will be roughly? They're able to tell early in the start of the new calendar year. I can't tell you what UFB is going to be, what the unexpended is going to be, until I would say at least July 2nd. Because we deal with public safety services. We could, and I mean, this is an absolute extreme, and I'm not pretending like it's not an extreme, but I use it frequently where it's, in June, we could have a serial arsonist come to town. If that happens, the police overtime is now shot, and the fire department's overtime is now shot. We have to have money available for that. You look, and we had the winter storm in March. Before that 550 was higher. If we had one storm in March, I think it's safe to say that potentially we could have had two. That 550 is now lower, and we still have several months to go. In terms of their overtime, I don't want to speak to it because of everything else that's happened, but I can tell you that they are currently passing up opportunities because we don't have the staffing available to be able to do it. I've spoken with their battalion chiefs, their deputy chiefs about opportunities out there that would bring in revenue that we've had to say, you guys don't have the staffing. It's great you want to help, but you don't have the staffing and we're not taxing you guys any further. What this essentially will do is, as Fred's saying, is the hope is it'll maintain 13 across the board, which, as we heard on the 7th and the 20th, it's a safety concern for those guys. And as I've said from day one of taking this position, when it comes to safety, when it comes to public safety, you have to be willing to bend a little bit more. In terms of what you guys want to cut, that's up to you guys 100%. As I said, I'm not going to mention that. But I think it's important to realize that, I mean, right now I'm looking at one of the proposals they had that could have brought in additional revenue to the town, but we didn't have the staffing available. We did the math out in terms of what would we need to bring on staffing to be able to do this versus what revenue would it bring in. It didn't work out. However, we're getting closer to that point where that may be an opportunity. And that may be able to provide us with 2 dispatchers in their call room, which is, that's standard, correct?
No, it's we have 2 dispatchers Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, and then overnight is 1, and on the weekends is 1. And so to give you perspective, they dispatch for 3 communities. So if Pelham has a motor vehicle accident, and Londonderry has a building fire, and Hampstead has a medical call, one person is dealing with all 3 of those things. And I offer anyone who wants to come, and Ron did it once, and he had a great time. And you're all welcome to come ride with us. Sean, whenever you'd like, or come sit, or Chad, or any of you, all of you, or come sit in our dispatch, or come sit in our dispatch and watch them dispatch. It's a lot for one person, and we have 3 communities that we dispatch for, 2 of which bring in revenue. We've had other communities come to us, approach us, but what we were going to take in revenue, I'm not going to make one person now do more work by themselves. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's unsafe.
All right.
You know?
So, thank you. Anything else from the BudCon for fire?
So maybe another way we can attack this is that, Justin, you talked about adding I forget what the fund was called, but some monies, I believe it was in the range of $300,000 to $400,000.
The contingency fund.
The contingency fund, right? And what was the total on that?
That is 396 around
396.
Yeah.
All right. So if we're increasing the fire department overtime, I can't speak today, the fire department overtime by $320K, does that offset some of your concern which led you to want to have that 396 contingency? Could we reduce some of that 396 contingency?
So keep in mind that 396 contingency is 100% UFB with 0 tax impact.
Fair enough.
The other thing too is it's not just for the fire department, correct? It's for the police department as well.
So that
DPW and all
extreme
sorts of
example
other
I just
departments.
gave, we'd be able to come to you and say, hey, this is what happened. We need this additional appropriation. Can we use it?
So what would happen if we had the great Londonderry fire of 1905 the last year? Like, what would happen? Well, how would we handle that as a community if like, everything was on fire? And I'm just curious.
So we have the $557,000 that was underexpended. If that didn't cover it, I would look at essentially draining our reserves in various aspects. And then at that point, I would likely go to the state and utilize this as the exact reason as to why we need to draw on fund balance. Unlike the school, we're not able to do that with a public hearing. We need state approval.
Okay. So if we had an emergency of
there is an emergency.
There could be a bigger emergency than this, and it started going through my head like, what happens if this happens next year? And all of a sudden, just the 1,000-year storm hits us. What do we do?
It's one during that March storm. Speaking with the fire department at that time, because we were in a freeze, informed them they could go up to 13 if they needed to, if not more, despite being in the freeze.
I can tell you, when we had the ice storm, I worked for 7 straight days. And it wasn't sitting around for 7 straight days. So that storm could happen again, right? And I wasn't the only one working for 7 straight days. It was a lot of the department, right? So I think that's an example of something that has happened in our community that drew a huge financial burden, and it was Mother Nature who caused it.
Yeah, and depending on the situation, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Depending on the situation, FEMA has offered, but they will have emergency relief.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're covered on that end, because no matter what line we put in here, there's going to be some possible disaster that can happen.
And that's why I try to leave, some buffer in there to to be able to deal with the fact we're responsible for emergency services. We can't decide, hey, 2 a.m. we already hit our overtime quota. We're not coming to the fire.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
And that's where our number was our best estimate, basing it on 13 people and 2 possible injuries. Because to your point, we can't come up here and say, well, what if 5 people or 7? That's just irresponsible.
Yeah. Right. We also have members that are in the military, and they can be deployed at any time in their cycle. And I think one of them is actually trying to do some officer development, and that will put him out
For 6 or 12 weeks.
The benefit is that we don't have his salary. We have his salary available, but we're paying out 1.5 times that. So a lot of things we have little control over.
So can I just add one thing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with you that I believe that the $1.3 million in overtime is probably the right number. What I have a problem with is you average about 8 to 9% vacancy on the salary line historically. So if you assume that similar rate on salaries, you're going to have $268,000 of savings in salary in 2026.
So as of January, we're going to be fully staffed.
Like we just talked about, we can't predict.
Oh, no, and I agree. And if somebody left tomorrow, it's going to, if we had a candidate that was terrific, it's still going to take us 8 weeks to put them through the process. You're right. There is going to be that lag, and that lag gives us a little bit of flexibility, but we're still paying more than what we're saving.
And the difference, Ryan, is this, that in the last 10 years, it's not been one position for 8 weeks. It's been 2 or 3 or 1 for a whole year, right?
We were carrying 6 at one point.
We were carrying 6. And so, unfortunately, those dollars in the salary that were left over from vacant positions, as long as him and I are running the fire department, aren't going to be like that, unless we're told otherwise, and we're told that we can't fill positions and we have to leave them open. Our goal is from January 1st on, when we have a full roster, if somebody leaves, we're going to hire it right away. We're going to put somebody back in that seat because that's the right thing to do.
And then, Brian, the other thing that you may not be aware of is that all of the buyouts for somebody retiring comes out of our salary line. So if somebody retires with a $20,000 buyout, that may exceed the amount of time that we have that position open. If I'm not speaking incorrectly on that.
So that's accurate. However, we have an accrued liability line that historically we do the adjustment at year end rather than every single time. That way it doesn't draw on it instantly. And should there be money left over at year end, not money left over, but should, the finance department be under budget by $200,000 and they are now over by 30, we're not drawing on that liability because net budget, it nets itself out.
But we have to plan
we're
on that.
changing that policy to likely 2 times a year, so it will be better reflected for some of the larger buyouts that have occurred.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I have just one. So it's really easy, I think, to follow the money on this too, right? So if we say the 300 and some odd thousand that you are estimating that you need for the overtime for the 13 people at all times, if there's money left over, that gets added to undesignated fund balance. Say you have 100,000 left over, for example. We now will have, hopefully as long as the warrant article passes, that overtime designated balance. Couldn't we just take, if that's funded from the the UFB, can't we say, let's say they have 100,000, let's say police has 50,000, so we know we have like 150,000 left from overtime that rolled into the UFB. Can't we then say, next budget season, this is how much overtime is left over. We're rolling this into the overtime emergency fund.
The only concern with that is you're not going to know that until a year after.
Exactly, yes. Yes.
Also, it's not just an overtime fund.
Okay.
It's a contingency fund for everything.
Okay.
It also, there are stipulations on how much can remain in there.
Okay.
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I had it in one of my PowerPoints, but it's a percentage less debt service and one other item, I believe.
Okay.
So yeah.
it needs to be voted every year.
Yes.
So for this year, this is the amount. For next year, it will be a different amount.
Correct, yes.
Regardless of what was left.
Right, exactly.
Your overtime
Yep.
numbers.
Yeah, that
But yes.
my brain was just going to, if this was sort of set aside for overtime, we didn't use it, can we add it back to overtime in the fund in the
Yeah.
following year?
No,
yeah,
you can't.
okay.
But it's a good idea, but
Yeah, okay.
it doesn't work that way. But
Okay.
if we did the contingency fund, it would be a different amount next year based on the calculation in the formula.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I had one quick last question. So in public comment in the last budget committee meeting, someone brought this up, and I just wanted to hear from you guys what the difference is. So they said that if you had 10, 14 shifts instead of 24-hour shifts, it would equal a smaller increase in the overtime spend, and I don't...
No, 10s and 14s are equivalent to 24-hour shifts. They're both a 42-hour work week.
Okay.
The only thing that would be different is if the firefighters worked more hours, and that's a contractual thing.
Okay.
Yeah, 10s and 14s would have to be contractually.
Well, it's a wash, though. If they work 10s and 14s, and that used to be a very popular schedule at one time, and cities have changed for a number of reasons. We saw a number of them change during COVID because they wanted to have less changeover in personnel. You also see trends like maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday night shifts seem to go on. People are sick on those days. We've never had 10s and 14s, but I've heard this from other fire departments. Or on beautiful days, people take more time because it costs them less because they're just taking the day or the night off. Our guys can take shifts off at whatever number they want. So if they're having a child care issue and they need 8 hours off, they don't take 24 hours off.
Okay.
If they have a doctor's appointment and they won't need 2 hours off, they can take 2 hours off because it saves us 2 ways. It saves us from them going, oh, now I have to burn a 24-hour shift, and they're being upfront with us why they need it off.
Yeah, it's looking at it, I was just thinking of I'm not a firefighter, so from an amateur standpoint, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense because safety-wise, someone on 24 hours versus someone not, but thank you for explaining that. That helps.
And then some places go to 24 hours, this is not for Londonderry, but because of travel time for their employees, because their employees can't afford to live. Having said that, we have a number of employees that they have to live further away because the cost of living is difficult to live in this town for their salaries. But, and which is something that is unfortunate, but it's a reality.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for the fire department?
All right, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. Who's next?
The conversation is to you guys. You asked us to come back with potential cuts or recommended or options for cuts. I feel like we've done that. Where are you at in this conversation?
So I guess I'll bring one up. You guys had a potential opportunity, and Finance had presented a warrant article for only one police officer for the patrol unit. I'd like to hear from the police department if that would actually be successful or not with only having one compared to two.
I would also like to correct Ted. I had brought that up. It was not just, as was brought up earlier, it was for 2 police officers and then for 1 police officer. It wasn't just for the single police officer. It was to give the citizens of the town the opportunity to choose.
Or vote for 1.
Correct.
Okay, well, I'd still like to hear from the police department if it would actually be a successful program if it would only be 1 compared to 2.
Thanks for the question, members of the council, budget committee. I think that I answered this last time, but I'll reiterate. We do 6.7 hours a week is what you averaged out from the data. As I alluded last time, it's not effective. So if the voters chose to give the police department 1, great. We'll take that. We'll make do. We'll put out some good numbers, and you'll get up to 40 hours a week of traffic enforcement. I think the approach to 2 was realistic because obviously we have a large town. We have a lot more traffic coming in, and we'd be able to split that unit up, if you would. So you can dedicate 1 to the north, 1 to the south, hitting the main travel corridors during the commuter hours. As the chair of the budget committee had mentioned, I'm easy. Whatever we want to do, I'll make it work. Whatever Ryan wants to do with the overtime, I'll make it work. This is easy. So let's just get some direction, and we'll hit the road running. I think 2 is ideal. I mean, that's really good, but I'm not a greedy man, and I understand what the concerns are through the budget committee, through the pressures that you're being asked of by your friends and family, and I respect that. So I would just say that if that was an approach on the warrant articles, as Justin pointed out, I think that's actually kind of brilliant. I didn't even think of that myself. Not that I'm brilliant, but that Campo has always got this stuff figured out, and I think the way that you guys discussed it, I'd be in support of that.
Okay.
And I would like to explain the reason why I brought this up to the budget committee, and why I brought it up instead of doing 1 or 2 and giving the voters the option, because I prefer 2. I'm not sure if the voters want both of them on. And my fear is that if the voters do not want both of them on, then we get nothing. 1 additional officer for this purpose, it might be more palatable to them at the end of the day. And I would much rather, throw the dice in giving them those options, and that they choose a single officer than they just vote down both officers.
And on the other hand, if we only put up 1 on the warrant article, then we're taking away the opportunity for them to elect 2 or select 2 if that's what they would like.
I like the option, and Chief, I appreciate your comments on we'll make it work. I do like the option of, if this, having the phased approach, scaling it, if the voters chooses, or going with 2 if the voters choose.
Sure. I think that, as we discussed at that first or second meeting when that question was asked, in the ideal perfect world, these are the concerns that we hear from the community, right? So it's not just, we're looking for something creative and to build our roster. That's not it, because there's a lot of added responsibilities when we bring on more people. But the concern is there. It's a real concern for the citizens when these traffic complaints come in, and we sit through these meetings at the traffic safety. We've been sitting on these things for years, and the complaints don't stop. Well, I can tell you, as I said last time, High Range Road, significant reduction. Now, there are still people that speed. Everyone speeds. These roads are what they are. People are trying to get somewhere. But the number of complaints from High Range decreased. Litchfield Road decreased. And I'm sure it's going to decrease on Gilchrist. So, again, I think that the idea of the question that was asked was an idea. I think it's a direction we should investigate as to which direction. And I think, as the chair pointed out, I think why not put it on the voters? I won't be offended either way. We will continue to handle business. We'll put our resources where we deem appropriate when staffing allows, and we'll make it work.
I also want to support what you guys did with this, because I also support 2 officers, but I agree with doing both approach, because I agree with you. If the voters want 1, then tell us they want 1. At least they have the opportunity to try for 2. So I actually like the opportunity also of doing both, as Justin had said, to word the warrant article that way. So I support it.
I think originally Chief had proposed 4 officers. Is that correct?
Actually, what Councilor Farrell had asked me was, in that meeting, in the grand scheme, how does all this work? What would I like to do ideally? And it was 2 for a traffic, add another in detectives, and entertain the possibility of adding another SRO, I believe is what I said. So that would be the 4 for that major aspect of it all. Obviously, schools are a big issue, and I think these are the things that we address when unfortunate threats happen in our community. We react to those. Last 2 years ago, after Uvalde, I worked with Dan Black, with the superintendent of the school system here, and we talked about adding security. A lot of people don't know what we did, but it's through the networking, and Mr. Slater's here too. We networked him with an idea for the school. And what we did was we had an extra officer on overtime, and we would have them staff the school that was vacant. We did that because children belong to a parent, and children are in schools learning. I mean, these things happen. Parents worry. And when parents worry about their children, it's our job as the police department to protect them. In a collaboration with them, we made that work. Should the time come when we have an officer in every school? Absolutely. But I think, like everything else, we'll get there in time. I think if we set plans in place, as the finance director had mentioned earlier, these are some of the conversations that we've been having for the last several years. We knew where the errors were through our town budgets, through our department budgets, and we just didn't, wing it. We have a plan in place, and we're trying to get there. So to that, yeah, in an ideal world, we can get there down the road. We'll figure it out when it's appropriate for everybody.
What a lot of people don't realize, because it's not openly discussed, is there is a lot of collaboration between the forms of government where, the fire, PD, DPW will collaborate with their departments. And there's just a harmonious relationship back and forth where the schools will help, troubleshoot an HVAC system over here, or we provide. I know that the fire and your situation where you just mentioned, fire mentions something several months ago about providing dedicated medic at the football games. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss that. Yes, we've heard there, one pair of pants, two pockets, but there is significant that the public doesn't know. And I think it should be discussed more often, where there is collaboration between library, town, and the schools. And that's really comes down to that networking and that relationship building that your colleagues, the schools, the superintendent's office, town manager's office put into in the effort. So I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about all the cost avoidance or cost savings that we have by that partnership.
Thank you for saying that. I think it's important because when the town leadership puts the right people in department positions as department heads, it's up to us to deliver. And we collaborate quite often. And I will say this, as the union president for the department heads, this is something that we do quite often. Budget season, not budget season, it's all in the same. And we take it very seriously because you guys entrust us with a very important role in our community, so it's up to us to deliver. So we'll continue to do that.
Even during the budget freeze that we had, there was collaboration and partnership and working together. Hey, I need this. I got you on that, and just that relationship. So I mean, we may be talking about 1.144 million of savings here, but because of those relationships that we have with our other forms of government, I would say that there's significant more savings because of that, and I appreciate all that hard work that
Thank you.
The schools, the town, and the library put in for each other. So thank you. Anything else for PD? All right, go ahead.
Bring back data.
For which one?
After you get one or two, I still like one, but.
So are you asking me to get data if this gets approved, you mean, by the voters? Yeah, absolutely. That would be easy to do. Did you get the data we gave you a week and a half ago through the deputy chiefs?
The map, it made me so happy.
Yes. So I'm glad you got that. I'm glad it worked out. Okay, we can do that.
All right.
So Justin, if I see this correctly, right now what you're proposing on the warrant articles, one officer would be 4 cents on the tax rate. Is that correct? So, am I reading that right?
Yes.
And so then potentially 2 officers would be 8 cents. Is that correct? I don't have what you provided to us 3-4 weeks ago.
If we did 2 officers, and correct me if I'm wrong, everything would be doubled except the cost of the vehicle, so it's not exactly twice the amount. It's less than that, a little less than
6.9 cents.
Okay.
So your salaries, benefits are doubled, but they're only asking for 1 vehicle. Correct?
All right, so you were going to say something wrong?
No,
just breathing heavily.
No, I was just going to say. What I was going to ask what was the next we were going to discuss in other departments?
Well, I mean, we can talk about the DPW and the 150K sorry about that, for road safety. Again, that's not something I don't think that members of the Budget Committee think should get cut. We think that's important and that we want our DPW employees safe on the roads and working on the sides of the roads. But we did what you asked, so that's, I guess if we're going to go down the list, that would be the next one to discuss.
That's one of those where I see it could get split, where some of that, the safety equipment we could get, but the police detail included in that could also separate that out to get it smaller while still providing some of the actual safety.
I would refer that question to Mr. Wally.
So are you discussing putting it in two separate lines?
No, I'm trying to figure out,
You just want the
because
breakdown.
I think the safety equipment itself, like the Jersey barriers and things like that, are highly important. That's just if there's an optional aspect of it. So I'm just trying to look at it in that way to make sure we get that aspect of it.
So what you're saying, if I heard you correctly, is seeing it, divorcing the two on the ballot.
Yeah, because one I see as almost we absolutely need, and one I see as
Well, either way, it's not a warrant article, correct? It's in the proposed budget.
Correct.
This is part of the proposed budget.
And my thing is, these are the people that are out there keeping our community safe. And I'm not trying to make it emotional because, you brought up great points earlier. Is like, we used to say in the Marine Corps, what if grasshoppers had machine guns? We'd all be screwed. We can create hypothetical situations all the time and draw emotions and everything out. We've definitely seen that in previous council meetings. But at the end of the day, we have a professional or professionals that say, hey, look, the community, we hear the community. The community is addressing traffic. The community community has highlighted traffic. The community has highlighted other things. They've highlighted, a need for response time. They've highlighted a need for services. They've highlighted a need to keep our roads clear and everything else. And we have the professionals that, as Chief Bernard said earlier, that we hire the right professionals to advocate for the things to address and mitigate those concerns. When we're talking about the, safety of SROs versus safety of our DPW, they're both equally important. They're the ones plowing our roads. They're the ones protecting our kids. Again, not to draw on emotions and stuff like that, but we have professionals that are here telling us, hey, these are concerns and these are the things that we need to mitigate those concerns and keep our employees safe, who, oh, by the way, keep our community safe.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I think the argument for not breaking up that number into two different lines, one for police details and one for equipment, safety equipment, was that it gave DPW the option of spending it different ways based on the opportunities. If they had an opportunity to get some discounted equipment, they could do that. But if we had already used that bucket, that takes that away. So having it just be 400 for safety, I think gives them more options.
And I want to highlight a previous conversation. I'm sorry, Dave.
Have you a question? Happy to sit down.
I just want to highlight previous budget workshops where, the director of DPW discussed, hey, when I have flaggers, we're pulling two personnel from an already strained staff to flag when they can be doing their job. They're in place. If we were to bring in PD, hypothetically, to provide those flagging services, he's not pulling, Chief Bernard, you would correct me, you stated you would not be pulling from patrol. They would be coming in from overtime, and that's what, correct. Mm-hmm. So, just want to highlight that. We're creating a delta of 2 with the flagging for each tree removal or whatever, versus pulling people who are off and not subtracting from those who are on duty, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So just to explain how we arrived at that number a little bit in greater detail, and I think you're all kind of saying the same thing. But the 150 was derived from, in a perfect scenario where we're fully staffed, and when we looked at how many times we set up our work zones and we're doing the trafficking ourselves, traffic control, we arrived at 1,500 hours. We took that, multiplied it by the rate that the police department hires in police officers at, and it's $99 an hour roughly, and so therefore you're at $150,000. Now, that being said, I would hate to advocate for a line increase like that, or create a new line, and then it fall flat on its face, because for the last 2 years we've been struggling to get to full staff. We were down as many as 4. Sadly, we just lost another candidate, second one in as many months, to declining our offer because we don't pay enough. So obviously we're not going to have work zones set up as much and hit that 1,500 hour mark for flagging. What we also didn't want to do was to just pigeonhole ourselves into having it only be for one sole purpose of hiring traffic details. So if we felt as though we had a project, say something very significant, like a major culvert collapsed, portion of it, or something to that effect, or we had to replace it, so we were going to set up, it would be more cost effective to rent some Jersey barriers to cordon off that dangerous area, set up some temporary traffic signaling or whatnot, rather than having 2 traffic officers out there day in, day out for 4 weeks straight. It might be simpler to just rent, some of those items and put those in place. So that's the line that would come from. So I didn't then say, well, let's, throw on another $25,000 on top of the 150 for that. No, we wanted to try to stay conservative, but have the flexibility so that in perfect years, if we're doing a lot of work and we're fully staffed and we have the ability to, we'll predominantly be using that for traffic detail officers. But if we have real large projects, and it makes more sense to bring in, equipment that we can do and then make it a safe work zone that's temporarily set up, and not have to use detail officers, then we can do that too. So just provide a little bit of flexibility.
So the equipment is rented, not purchased then?
Correct.
Okay, that's where I was missing.
Yeah.
Because I thought, why wouldn't we purchase this equipment?
No.
And then, okay.
Because those are items to go out and purchase, temporary traffic signals where you set them up. I don't know, perhaps if you've ever been
orange
through.
ones that.
Yeah, they reach up over their trailers and stuff like that. You're looking at a cost like $75,000. Why would we come in front of you and ask to buy one of those in the event of, and talking about what ifs? It just makes more sense to rent it. Same thing with Jersey barriers. We're not going to go stack up 300 of them down there. We have some for smaller little things, but if we wanted to set up a true zone and you need a bunch, then you just rent them. Okay. And then that eliminates the need to have officers out there every single day, directing traffic.
I was just thinking this was safety equipment we didn't have or didn't have access to currently, and so that was considered.
It's equipment that we could potentially need for a specific project, but we would rent it.
So project-based.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, this is sort of related to this kind of situation. Now, the storms that we had last year where power lines went down and trees went down.
Yes.
Your crews were out there clearing trees?
Yes.
But you didn't have, I'm assuming in most cases, a police detail watching out for your guys who were clearing, correct?
In emergency services, no. Virtually all 3 agencies are pretty well maxed at that point. So we'll do things like just block the road. I mean, the community at large knows we're in an emergency, and so
the community do a really good job at posting that on Facebook.
And all 3 departments do that. We cone things off. Sorry for the inconvenience, folks. Put up barricades and things of that nature, and we just.
But if need be, this line could potentially be used that, if need be.
Correct. I mean, if we have major thoroughfares closed down for days on end, like former people talking about during the ice storm. I remember it well, and there were times where we had to rent Jersey barriers, and at least in the community that I was in, we closed the roads hard closure. Sorry for the inconvenience. One of them ended up having to go all the way out through a neighboring town to get around and back into town. Those things can come up, and I just like to say we can all talk about our horror stories if we've been in this business long enough. We can come up with a lot of what ifs. We can come up with a lot of things that actually have happened and not what ifs. But where I'd like to counsel both the budget committee, and I know in the councils, you guys have a tough job to do, that you're tasked with. But again, I heard the acting fire chief up here talking about hopefully, and I hear other counterparts and other department heads speaking about hope. We hope we hit the number right, and we hope we get this right. And I just want you to hedge on caution with that, because when you're talking about getting your operating budget hopefully correct, or we hope we're going to hit the mark, that is usually a very thin, narrow margin that you're targeting. And again, anything can come our way, and we can't, budget for the max, but we shouldn't be budgeting for the minimum either. So just be cautious when you're trying to hopefully get it right, because that's not a strategy. Hopefully we're paying people the right amount and they don't leave the fire department. It's clear to hear that they're coming up on full staff. But in a meeting today, we talked about a neighboring community that is paying excessively more than Londonderry. And so they could be, wheeled away. We've been struggling for over 2 years to get to full staff. And in the last couple months, we're striking out. So, and that's largely in part because of pay and the amount of hours that they're working. So that's all I have to say on that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, council. So where are you at on these opportunities presented by the BudCom?
Did anyone have any other? Is that what they had to present?
Library?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, actually, I think it's not up to us or up to the town council whether they put that warrant article on the ballot or not. That's up to the library trustees.
That's correct.
I was just thinking.
Well, it's up to us if we put it on the ballot or not. We have to vote on it. We can say it doesn't go on the ballot.
Outside of the warrant article, it's just.
I would have to do research on that one. That one I don't know off the top of my head. I can tell you that if you don't put it on, they very easily can do a citizen's petition. But I don't know if I'd have to do research on whether the trustees can put it on without the council, or if the council can take it off if the trustee. I'm not going to pretend like I know that one.
I was not speaking to the warrant article. I was speaking to their operating budget. I apologize
20K.
Yep, the 20K. I apologize for not specifying.
Aaron?
Did you see something specific in the operating?
Yeah. So and Aaron, I'm just going to go through each of the lines and I'll explain the reasoning for each.
Okay.
And the reasoning why I came up with that amount. So first, it was start for general expenses. It was to reduce it by $1,000. It was just due to the averages. It just I do not believe that it needed to be at $10,000. This was under for the so general expenses, supplies, so $1,000 out of that, so from $10,000 to $9,000. Okay. Next was the office supplies. I'm just reading it verbatim from the budget book and from the line.
I didn't create that budget line. There's a lot in there that I disagree with the account names. Like, I think we have a repairs and maintenance, and then a maintenance and repairs.
Yes.
Oh, good. So from $12,000 down to $10,000, and again, just based off of previous years, not exceeding $10,000. The books and periodical supplies, that was $100,000 down to $90,000, and again, this is from the proposed budget. These reductions were not made based off of the default budget. I did not specify that at the beginning, so that additional $10,000, and my reasoning for that was G-Milks will be fully in place, access to more periodicals, access to more supplies, the furniture and fixtures from $2,500 down to $1,000, so savings of $1,500 there. We'll take our time.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The furniture was down to what?
Down to $1,000.
1,000. I'm sorry. Thank you.
And that was all.
Okay.
So that was within the
20.
Yeah, about $20,000. Yeah, a little over 20.
Aaron, what would life at the library look like with those? Go ahead.
So I have general expenses going to 9,000, office supplies going to 10,000, books and periodicals going to 90,000, and furniture and fixtures going to 1,000.
Correct.
Was there anything else?
That was all.
Okay, that's what I had.
That gets you to 14,500.
Oh, maybe I was missing something, so I guess it wasn't.
Sorry.
Oh, yep, okay, yep, there's my bad. Another page. So the MGMT services down to 19,000. Management services down to 19,000. This line, it hasn't exceeded this amount. The highest it's gone was in 2023, where it jumped up to 29,000, but in other years it ranged between 7,000 and 17,000. And then where's this? Printing services just down to 4,000. And then travel and mileage down to 0. That line there, I did have a question about now that you're here. The addition of this line and the reasoning for the travel and mileage services line.
So there was a discussion at the trustees meeting to that line was increased based on us attending more meetings related to GMILKs. We have board meetings and other subcommittee meetings related to that. But there was also a request from one of the trustees to try to explore homebound delivery service here in town for those patrons that cannot come to the library, and that would be used for that, which is something we have explored. I would like to explore more. I'm just looking at the legalities of what that would look like, but again, that would be a service that would be taking a staff member out of the library for a certain length of time, whatever that looks like, which would, again, is why we needed the increased staffing. So, and that was a request from one of the trustees to explore the option of homebound delivery.
Okay.
So that was the reason for that increase.
Okay. Just a quick question, Justin, on the if they do this homebound service, doesn't that open the town up for liability?
That was my concern.
I mean, doesn't it open us to a lot of liability if we do that?
It potentially could, depending on the answer is yes. If you're taking someone out of the library or out of anywhere, it's increasing liability no matter what it is. If the police officer's driving, the fire driving, it's a liability. How much is a different question, because that then depends on the other aspects of what they're doing, where they're delivering it to, as crazy as that sounds. By that I mean, are they putting it in their mailbox or are they bringing it to their door? Because from what I've been told, going up the steps increases your liability, so it increases. So all those factors will come into place, as well as what vehicle are they using? Are they using a town vehicle? Are they using a personal vehicle? The short answer is yes. The long answer is I can't tell you how much and if it's significant or not without going into more detail regarding it.
I would just ask the trustees know that you need to look into that question too.
Of course. Yeah. And so this was just kind of brought up as conversation, and certainly we would explore it. There are also other options where we can do a mail delivery service where we would, and actually another library already does this, where they send materials through the mail, U.S. Postal System, and they get delivery at their home, leaving us obviously out of the picture, but it would include increase expenses regarding postage and other things like that. So there's different ways we can look at that to see what options work best. Obviously, homebound delivery, you're talking liability, you're talking additional staffing, you're talking some additional time outside of the building. Postage, you're talking about materials for that. Postage has gone up like quite frequently all the time. Excuse me. So there's other things we have to look at, and explore.
So I don't want to speak for the trustees here, but they can explore those options, and should they determine that the mailing one is better, where it's a bottom line budget, this year we have it in travel and mileage. Next year they can take a look and say, nope, it should be in postage because that's what works best for us.
No, that's fair enough.
But as long as it's in there, they can utilize it for the need they...
I'm just concerned about the liability.
Nope, absolutely. It's a good point.
Yeah.
And the the reasons why, because I penny pinched around the library budget. There are members of the community who said that they were looking. They're like, oh, there's $200,000 that you could cut out the library budget. So I took a look and saw what I thought maybe what could the library afford to cut down on, and it's up to the trustees at the end of the day.
Yep.
So I it's 10% of that of what taxpayers were saying to me, and again, at the end of the day, it's up to the trustees to make these decisions, or the council to just make a cut to it. And those citizens should go to the trustees and should go to here at the council and should go to the budget committee and email us and let us know what the additional cuts are. But just from my look, just based off of prior years, I thought 20,000, approximately 20,000. I thought that was reasonable. I thought that wasn't going to, right? It's not going to kill the library. We're not letting go of staff. We're not axing departments or whatnot. But it just tightens the belt just a little bit, and
So
for the taxpayer.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So you have the items from Joseph. You have the items from the budget committee. My recommendation: discuss it over the trustees. We have a next meeting on the 16th. If you're able to provide feedback before that to the BudCom and to the council, that's fine. But my recommendation would be come back at the 16th at our next budget hearing.
So,
workshop
I have a meeting next Monday.
on the
That's the 9th.
That's the 9th.
Yeah, we don't have.
we don't have a meeting on the 9th.
Chad canceled it last meeting.
Oh, okay.
On the yeah, he canceled it on the 18th.
Welcome.
So whenever I told that we had a meeting on the 9th, I apologize. We don't.
So we have a trustees meeting this Wednesday, and where I'll be bringing these suggestions to the trustees and allow them to make their decisions at how would they like to go forward. I just have a couple of things. I know there was also brought up to cut the children's librarian position. Is it possible, Justin, and this is just something I'm going to bring back to the trustees, I'm not saying anything as far as decision making, but I want to be able to give them options, that could we do a warrant article similar, if I understood correctly, to the police, where there was 2 warrant articles, one for a full-time children's librarian and one for a part-time, and one would vote out the other depending on how many votes. Is that possible or not? Just so I can bring that info.
Similar to the police, what you're saying is you do a full-time children's librarian, and then you do a part-time children's librarian, which becomes null and void should the full-time children's librarian.
Right.
I believe it is.
Okay.
Where we're doing it twice in the same ballot, I now want to verify with DRA because I'm fighting it on 2 articles, not just one.
Yep, that's fine. I just want to be able to bring that option.
One article I feel like I can make that argument with DRA where it's now 2. I just want to verify that they are.
That's perfectly fine. I just want to be able to bring that option to them. If they heard that the police are doing it, maybe we can do it.
As I said, we've done it with other items. We've done it with capital reserves and dissolving and things of that. So I don't see it being an issue.
Okay.
But I'd like to verify where
Absolutely.
That's what the school did last year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just looking
it's
at
one, I'm 98% sure, but I want to get you that extra 2%. That way,
no, I totally
we're not
understand
coming
that.
and saying, Justin, what'd you say?
So just giving some perspective for people here and at home, value of my home is $624. This warrant article is a penny, is 1.9 cents per month, is 98 cents a month to have a full-time library person for the children's section. Less than $1 a month, at least for my home. There could be other people, slightly different situation, but less than $1 a month to have a library full-time person.
Off of everything else.
Less than $1 a month?
I mean,
$1 a month?
pennies
All right,
add up.
all right,
$1 a month.
All right, stop.
Less than
Come
a
on,
candy bar.
let's.
Can
we're
I
not
just
gonna
speak?
have this banter back and forth?
Can I just
Seriously.
speak to something where I I totally understand police, fire, and DPW are extremely important services. I respect my department heads here very much. But I do believe that the library is also important. We provide a quality of life service that I believe our patrons feel is important to them. And our numbers, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Our numbers have gone up from the year as far as attendance, to our programming, to the library, to the services that we offer. And I have heard things where we want to shut the library down completely to help save the fire department. That's concerning. Well, I have. And that's concerning. And so I just want to make sure that we all understand that what we provide over there is important to a lot of our community members. And it's their lifeline in a way, just as much as police and fire are to some people. And I think that needs to be considered, that we do offer a service that's important. And when I come to the trustees and I present my recommendations and my, whatever that looks like to them as far as to continue those services, it is a minimal ask. It is not an ask of overabundance or anything of that nature. I respect the community and the fact that, there are, we don't taxes, all of that. I totally understand. But when I look at the library and I look at the services that we offer and what I want to continue to be able to offer to our patrons and our community, I feel it's important. And I wouldn't be doing this job if I didn't. And I think when I bring those to the trustees, I'm bringing that as a recommendation. In the end, you're right. It's their decision on how they want to move forward. And they could decide, I can go to them on Wednesday and say, okay, this is what the recommendations are. And they could say, you know what? Nope, we're not touching a thing. We're going to go forward. And that would be their decision. And I would respect that as their decision because that's what they're allowed to do. But I do want to say that the library has a very important role in this community. You heard it from the people from the concert on the Common, how popular the Saturday concert was and how wonderful that was, and the collaboration that we've had. We've had collaborations with both police and fire, and we want to continue that. And so this budget reflects that continuing process. So that's all I want to say.
I also want to provide some food for thought because when we had the budget meeting on Thursday, I pulled together some data. I looked at Londonderry compared to 9 other towns of similar populations: Derry, Bedford, Hudson, Salem, Rochester, Portsmouth, Keene, Dover, and Merrimack. And Londonderry, the New Hampshire State Libraries posts data for all of the towns in New Hampshire every year. So this is based on 2023 data. It's the most recent data that I have. The Leach Library had a budget of about $1.3 million for the year. The highest was Keene, having double the budget at about $2.4 million. Hudson had the lowest at $1.1. For reference, Keene has a population of 22,917. Well, we have a population of 26,708. We have more people and we have half the budget. If you take the annual library's budgets and divide it by the town's population, you can kind of get a per capita cost. So in Keene, it's $105 per person. So the annual budget divided by the 22,000 some odd people, it's about $105 a person. Londonderry is $48. The average for those 10 towns is $59.34. If you were to give Londonderry just the average, the budget for that year would have been $1,584,833, an increase of $293,000 for the year, or 22.6% of an increase. I looked at how many librarians we have. For that year, we had 13.4 librarians. Well, Portsmouth, a town that has, again, a lower number of population, they had 22,000 people, have 27 librarians. The average number of librarians for the 10 towns is about 16.8. So we are 3.4 librarians short of the average of 10 towns of similar population and size. The library is open it is open this many hours, 3,250 hours a year, the second highest of all the libraries. Bedford had the most at 3,370, so about 120 hours more a year. And Keene, the library with the highest budget, had 2,610 open hours.
Our librarians handle the most reference transactions per year, 19,445 out of all 10 of the libraries. Salem had the least at 1,342. We have the third highest physical collection of all of the libraries that of those 10 libraries. And we have the second highest collection of ebooks. All of these things mean that our librarians, where we're technically we are short-staffed by 3.4 people, are doing more hours with a bigger collection and handling more reference requests than all of the other libraries. We are doing more with a significantly less than other neighboring towns of same population size. And so one of the reasons I bring this up is this ask for an increase of the children's librarian. One of the things I looked into in children's librarians is literacy rates, right? Literacy rates are important. Literacy rates are actually so important that the Department of Justice keeps tracks of literacy rates across the country and test scores, because you can accurately predict crime rates based on literacy in this country. And so if we do not have good literacy in Londonderry, we're going to have higher crime rates. So that children's librarian and the attendance in children's program has a direct correlation to test scores and literacy rates according to research, which directly lowers crime rates, which I'm sure, Mr. Bernard would like to see very much. So all of these things sort of accumulate into the need for a children's librarian. We're short-staffed, we're doing more with less, but also if we're thinking about the town and what we want our town to be long-term, these are the types of things that are important, and I think these are the kinds of investments we need to make for now and for the future of Londonderry as well. And so these are, if the fire or police knows where I can pull this data together from and compare it, I will most certainly do that as well, but the library data was very easily available because it was all presented on the state website. So
thank you, Kate, for that.
You're welcome.
That was informative.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sharon.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you
We'll
all.
see you on the 16th. Justin, what do you need to advance, not to the 9th, to the 16th?
So we've heard a lot of suggestions. I need to know what you want me to carry forward to the 16th meeting.
There's two more things before we get to the end of it that I want to bring up, because these actually have to do with the council, and I think it's only fair that we bring them up. One of them was brought up by Mr. Plaza down there. Our attorney fees line is pretty high. I think that's something we maybe should discuss at some point. The other one is, and this one I don't know a lot about, and I don't know who brought it up from the minutes. Great minutes, by the way. Land use, apparently we lease land for $1 out in some places, and there was just a suggestion that we could raise the amount we lease the land out for. I don't know what that's referring to, but
what would that be referring to?
So it's referring to the property that is conserved land right here. I forget what the lot numbers are, but we lease it to Sunnycrest.
Yeah.
Because it's, I don't know. I don't know what it's zoned. I don't know what the whole story was. But I remember it being discussed last year when the lease changed hands from Max to Sunnycrest, and the amount was $1. And at the time, and I know there's more to the story, but at the time I thought to myself, wow, we have two orchards competing to get this land, and we're leasing it for $1. That seemed odd to me.
So yeah, those are just things I saw within the minutes that I thought we should bring up for the record, that were great things that were said during the meeting.
Yeah.
So
I think on that we'd have to have a non-meeting to discuss that contract.
yeah, maybe. I'm just trying to go through what was in there. Make sure, yeah, that might be a valid reason.
So one question for Justin about the attorney fees is there a reason that we pay the libraries attorney fees? Is it just historical, or is there a reason that we pay them as a town and the library doesn't pay their own legal fees?
So I understand. I'm going to say this in jest a little bit, if that's okay. It's one pair of pants, two pockets.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys. I only have one wallet.
Right.
So we can bill the library. They can bill the library separately, and that's just a separate invoice we have to process that's coming from the same pile of money. I understand that the library is a separate form of government. Historically, we have just paid their fees. I think if it's been in excess or contentious with the town, the trustees likely have paid it themselves. However, that predates me. That probably puts me back in high school, middle school when that was happening.
I'm only asking the question because the school, we don't pay their legal fees in its one pocket, right? We pay their bills.
But we send them.
I'm just curious why we don't have
Come
them
the
do
first of the month, they get a nice little ACH
Right.
trust or a significant amount. We so the library does have the ability, and the council has the ability to, July 1st and January 1st, write the library a check and say, have a great day. We don't do that. We have I like to think, a very cooperative relationship, Aaron.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So essentially that's that.
I'm not implying it's not cooperative. I'm just saying that to do it fairly, to Sean's point, we should have a budget in the library for legal and our budget as a town, just to show the differences.
Go ahead, Sarah.
One thing is no one has separate legal expenses. So if you look at the police department or fire, they don't have a legal line. It all comes through this legal line.
Right, but they're under the town, right? We have three forms of government, right? We have the school, we have the town, and the library. So that's a different form of government.
Yeah, but we don't fund the schools. We give them what their tax rate is.
No,
we fund.
Right, you're right.
So the library's budget stays, in terms of actual funding, stays with the town.
Mm-hmm.
The school, it gets sent over to them.
Okay.
In terms of doing that, you could recommend that. You could request the trustees. The only difference would be that the lawyers would send them a bill, they would sign off on it and send it to us to process. Where right now it just gets sent to us to process. Whatever the council and the trustees desire, that's.
I'm just asking a question as to why.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it came up at one of the trustees' meetings regarding this as well. I don't have a good answer for why. I hate saying that's how it's always been. That's how it's been since I've been here, and to me, it not that it makes sense, but it's not a big enough issue to address. We're not, paying the library's legal fees to sue us. Then it would be a different story. But that's kind of how I've looked at it. Like I said, if you guys want to change that process, we can look into that.
So, council, do you want to adopt these recommendations? 1.144 million of opportunities proposed by the.
So, not to interrupt, but just along that line of thought, when it comes to plowing, salting, and sanding, we take care of it. We don't send them a bill. When we cut the grass, we fertilize, we do things like that. If there's a tree down the parking lot, we don't send them a bill. So if you're going to start segmenting out one specific item, then you better look at it in totality. So all the services that the town works with the library with to see what's the most effective way to do it, then you just better be careful for what you wish for. That's all. I offer that. Thanks.
Great points. Good.
No, I was just saying it does bring up a good point because, those are extras that we're paying as a town for a library. That's just saying, I think the budget should be separated. Like, they should know how much they pay to have the plow, how much, but saying if we're going to have a true budget, three forms of government, we should know exactly what each thing's cost.
I think it would be really hard to separate a plowing contract for the library that's right next door to us that shares the parking lot.
People do it.
So, for what it's worth, I've always looked at the library as a large department of the town. They share the same tax ID as us. Well, the RSAs state they are a separate form of government. In talking with our auditors, they question that theory, I guess is the best way to put it.
Okay.
And when it comes to plowing, the town owns the building.
That's the other aspect. And it's one where it seems like a great idea in theory, but essentially it's one where we're now tasking additional administrative tasks to end up at the same point.
Cost versus benefits.
And especially where it doesn't change the tax bill, if that makes sense. It just shifts it to where it is. So instead of general government, it's now in the library. It actually, if you look at it that way, it takes it out of the town's hands. So the library trustees now have control over it instead of you guys. I understand what you're saying with kind of show the full picture, show the real picture, but it's one where now, Dave Plowing is sending a bill to the library and to the town. The library processes the bill, sends it to the town to pay. The town processes the bill, sends it to pay. So essentially, we're duplicating the work for minimal gain, and we're actually losing some of the appropriation that we have control over. Like I said, I've worked very well with the library. If they wanted to during that budget freeze, they could have said no, based on what the RSAs are with the trustees, but they assisted us and said, no, we'll help out. Just my own 2 cents on that. I understand where you're coming from with that, and it makes sense, but
I'm just asking a question.
It's one where it's duplicating efforts. And
It
I'm
could
not
also be
sure.
the other end, where if you completely separate them off, it could, on some of these items, cost more in the end compared to town services taking care of them.
I'm just going to let you all know, we do this to an extent already. I get a sewer bill from 268B Mammoth Road, or A, to the fire department, which I then have to turn around and DocuSign to my 2 friends here and send back over. So we're already doing it, and so I think, to Justin's point, you're adding another layer to something that
Right.
doesn't.
And this
doesn't-
one, the
wouldn't
sewer
need
bill,
it.
I can defend because it's user fees.
Correct, and there's an enterprise
I can
fee with that
defend
and all of
that.
that, and he can defend that, but I'm just saying, we're already doing it, so,
this one is
and if the
where
guy
it's
who
a taxpayer,
processes it, it's just another layer. Just,
I'm just asking a question.
Absolutely, it's a great question.
And, it could even go as far as to say, why do we have a third form of government then? Why is the library not under the town? Let's go that far and ask that question. Why is library separate? If we're paying
Maybe a
half the
state legislator should put an RSA.
I'm
in.
just-
Thank you for saying that, Sean, because that was going to be my comment.
All right, so to reel things back in. So a lot of great conversation, a lot of great work, and look, it wasn't easy to come up with that those opportunities presented by the BudCom. Again, back to reading lips, there was a lot of discussion, and I know it's not your fault. Okay. But there was a lot of discussion revolving like, hey, what are opportunities? What are ways? You came up with some great conversation points. I think what I believe I heard Justin say is, all right, council, what do you want? What do you want the going forward?
I'll speak up. I think we should adopt what you guys presented for the police. I think we should do 2 and then put the second one on there. I think that's an excellent suggestion. I think we should adopt that. Let the town decide if they want to. I mean, people are telling me they want 2, but maybe they'll go for 1. I think we should do that. I'm full support of that.
I agree with that. Again, the other stuff for me personally, 1 of 5, tonight 4. Looking at the benefits of the community services grant, looking at the benefits from Old Home Day, DPW safety, library. To me, these are things that are definitely the benefits outweigh the costs. And I want to echo what I stated earlier is, going through not just this budget season, but being on the BudCom and such, to me, it's very clear the department heads and the town employees and the library and and the schools do more with what they have, and going back to that collaboration between the departments and all 3 forms of government and everything else. Thank you again. I truly mean that. So with that, we agree on separating out for the PD traffic officers, having 2 and then 1 for the warrant, 2 separate warrant articles. Is there anything else that you want to move forward with?
I think on the library we're hearing back from the trustees.
We're hearing back from the library, from the trustees. Anything else?
And I don't see a need to cut a lot of the items that were presented as a lot of them are public safety and or, as you had said, carry a bigger benefit to the town than a cost.
Right, and, you know, to mimic what, you know, fire department stated, it's hard, it's nearly impossible to speculate what things are gonna be 18 months from now. And, you know, to Sean's point, you know, there are contingencies. What if this happened? Are we still able to fund, and we're not just gonna not show up? No one tonight, I didn't hear anyone tonight say, hey, we're gonna cut staff, because I've heard a lot of phone calls like, hey, you know, speaking to you know, our first responders, hey, is my job secure? Am I gonna get cut? Is there town staff that's gonna get cut? I didn't hear that once tonight. And I think as if I can provide some assurance that was to those employees that are providing the services to our community, that wasn't discussed at all. Not through this exercise, not through the budget season. We were talking about the possibility, we were talking about an exercise, but again, even the exercise didn't highlight cutting employees. We talked about not adding additional through warrant article, that was discussed, but not cutting our current staff that is in place. So if I can cause some, or if I can calm the waters, if you will, I just want that to be the message to go home tonight to these staff, that there was absolutely zero conversation on cutting our current staff that we have in place. We're gonna be all right. So with that, is there anything else that you want to move forward with, council, to amend the proposed budget? All right.
Not this time.
Seeing none, so the only thing is separating out that warrant article for the PD. Do you have what you need for the 16th? All right. I'd like to.
One thing before. Did you get the right answers you wanted on the overtime conversation?
I still.
Because that's the only one I see was an open question. Like some of the other stuff, like Old Home Day and stuff like that, I agree with you. That's just that was the only one where I saw there was still something
opportunities
open.
Or
just open questions.
What specifically? Let me ask you this: what specifically were your questions that weren't fully addressed that we can give to the PD and the fire department that they can come back with on the 16th?
I think it's just two different methodologies of how we're getting to our numbers.
Okay.
And I think what they're asking for in reality is a 52% increase to their overtime budget year over year. I agree that's too, I believe that's too aggressive. And maybe the overtime number is correct, but I think there's going to be offsetting savings somewhere to the tune of $200,000 or so.
Okay.
So I believe we're overfunding those combined lines, but I understand where they're coming from, and I think we'll see how it plays out.
Is it okay? All right. Thank you. Seeing that, is there anything else? Any final thoughts from anybody?
Final thought. Yeah, I guess so. If the council is not going to move forward with Ryan's recommendation, and I'm with you, Ryan, on thinking that overtime needs to be adjusted a little bit with fire. If you're not going to cut proposed, then I definitely feel uncomfortable with a contingency fund, that amount.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
So let me ask Justin a question based on that. So Justin, based on what the budget committee is saying, if we move forward with the 396, the contingency fund, would we be able to take some money out of the OT amount to offset some of their concerns?
So I first want to bring up is that the contingency fund is not just for overtime.
Correct.
Right.
I'm asking
I
a
think
question.
what led, Justin, if you don't mind me asking, I think what led you to request that is some of the problems that we've had with overtime funds or lack thereof.
So I'll say I'm more uncomfortable with the contingency fund than I am the overtime line.
Well, the contingency fund has the advantage of that it's not an increase on the tax rate, and that money, whether it's sitting in UFB or whether it's sitting in the contingency fund, makes similar or the same interest either way.
Is the contingency fund a warrant article?
Yes.
That's UFB is assigned to.
In terms of, you can, that's the maximum amount that you can put in the contingency fund. You guys can put that at $10 if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend that, but you're able to. So,
but there's no negative for putting the money in the contingency fund because it's going to make the same interest that it would in UFB.
Or
it will be
we can put it towards the budget.
Can we let Justin answer? Sorry.
It will be treated as though it didn't, in terms of the interest earning ability, it'll be treated as though it wasn't in a contingency fund. There will be no difference in that aspect. The essential difference is come year end, you asked, what happens if we have these giant things happen? We have that to draw on. We can go to the council and request to draw on that. And the only way that it can be touched is with approval from the council.
And also, to your point, that you could put it towards the budget, this contingency fund is coming from your undesignated fund balance, so it's not increasing your tax rate.
It's not about the increasing the tax rate, though. It's the undesignated fund balance is real money, and I get it generates interest. If we have that big a concern, I'd actually rather have it go to the budget lines than have some other fund that we have to have some other mechanism, because we have mechanisms to handle this. We have mechanisms to handle the contingencies. If we really are that worried, I would rather have it almost see it in the lines where the fire chiefs and the police chiefs can manage that money rather than us manage that money and have them to come to us every time they need something. Like, I just don't want to get in that scenario where
I just got 2 meeting invites from both chiefs trying to spend this $396 already. But I fully understand what you're saying. This was a move to prevent what's happened the past 2 years. And it puts it in the council's hands, and it allows us the additional appropriation without having to go to the state and without drawing on the taxpayers and the tax bill, I guess is a better way to put it. If you want to decrease it, we can. If you want to remove it, we can. It was an idea to put out there to kind of show what the arsenal fully is, I guess is the best way to put it.
And let's discuss that this also creates another opportunity for our professionals, our firefighters, our first responders, PD, DPW, and those departments to partner with the finance department to receive input from the council. And it's about collaboration and putting minds together to be better. And also to provide, yes, security in those what if events. And at the end of the day, if this is a warrant article, the voters will decide what they want to do. And I think this conversation is healthy because it better educates the voters on what the options are.
And I think, Sean, to your point of just increasing the operational budget, well, we can't just take this UFB and put it in the operational budget. Is that correct?
Well, we have to go to the Supreme, get a judge to.
Well, we keep acting like UFB is free money. It's not free money.
Right.
That's
Well, I'm not saying that it's free money. You're saying to just increase the operational budget. Well,
Yeah.
then we'd have to be increasing the tax rate.
Then we would. In that, I just don't want the mechanism where, like, I trust both of them to manage the money and not come to us every time they need something. And this creates a mechanism where now they have to come to us. So if we have that big a need, maybe we should give them more.
I completely agree with you, but then we have other people who may be here who may not agree that we should be giving that much more into the operational lines. So, do we solve this issue by increasing operations and then bringing it to the budget and the voters for a higher budget to be voted upon, or do we bring it to this way where we have a contingency to pull upon if need be?
Well, this is where I'm just trying to find the right number for that. And that's why I don't feel like that extra mechanism is necessary. Let's find the right number for those lines.
Well, then I guess at that point, do we just increase
we may
overtime drastically by another almost $400,000 then?
Well, It's finding the right number, not necessarily just taking what that is and dumping it.
One thing is if you had this on the ballot and it got voted yes, and no one touched it, it would lapse, and then it would stay where it is. So let's say we don't need it, but it's there if we do need it. Nothing happens. It's still in undesignated fund balance. It's only there if we need it.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have budgets and nothing happens, and the budget that was passed provides for all that, then you could go the year and not touch it. But if something happens and you need it, it is there.
I guess I have to think about it some more.
So I don't think they'd be coming to you for like.
Well, they would have to come in front of the council,
right?
wouldn't they?
But not for everyday expenses. It was only if they needed to touch
and I
it.
understand that.
You'd be seeing them in June.
I just wanted to remove that step of having them to come in front of us and go, hey, the town's burning down. Do we have permission? And they got to wait for a council meeting, or we got to call a special council meeting. It's like, if these big of emergencies happen, I don't think they need to come in front of us to ask for that money because something big happened.
Right.
That's where I'm worried about this.
So would you put that responsibility, say we do funds this, fund this, would you then remove the responsibility from the council and put it on the town manager?
It depends on how it.
I don't think we can do that.
No.
I don't think we can do that.
No, we can't do that.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the warrant article states the public body. And that every expense has to be listed in the town report as well.
Yeah, I just want a more efficient way of funding an emergency.
Absolutely.
An hour and 50 minutes are.
Yeah. Let me give a suggestion here. Is this possible? Ryan, you're concerned about 200,000, right? On the overtime. What if we left the budget the same and dropped our designated our contingency fund down to say 200,000 instead of 396,000? Yep. Or if we dropped to 200,000, you might get better support from the voters at 200,000, and it would also address some of your concerns, right?
It's a different number.
But those funds are, right, that's coming from UBF, not being raised by the taxpayer.
But it's still money.
But it's...
So the contingency fund it's a contingent aspect. It's not, it's, hey, as I've said, we can't spend over $1. If we spend over $1, we're looking at a lot of trouble on the town budget.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have to go to the state and request emergency everything else. This gives you that additional amount above the budget.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's UFB, and not because it's UFB, but it has to go before the voted board to be utilized. If we're at under budget by 300,000, we're not touching this.
It's staying funded.
Well, it lapses at year end.
Right.
So the next year it has to be approved again.
Approved by the voters?
Yep.
Yeah, and it would be a different calculation because it's based on the prior year budget.
With more accurate data. With data.
This isn't a capital reserve fund. It doesn't stay there.
So we're creating a mechanism that's only going to last a year.
Correct.
It's an awful lot of talk for 1 year.
That's where I'm getting into, is this the right mechanism?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's not a good thing to have in place.
I'm not saying it isn't.
Justin, is there a mechanism that would be continual? Or do we not have that in the state?
Why don't we do this?
I'll have to take a further look. I've in some of my research, I've seen other towns do some things that I'll have to take another look is the best way to put it without saying something.
I think you would be more comfortable if it wasn't something that lapsed year after year, that the voters would then have to go back and vote upon every year.
Good point. So why don't we do this? So we have a meeting on the 16th. Justin, you're clear with what you need to move forward?
Yep.
All right. We go with closing the budget workshop?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. Moving on, approval of minutes. So we have November 12th, 18th, and 26th. Do I have a motion to approve all three?
So moved.
I have a
Second.
motion from Ted, second from Ron. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Liaison reports. Assistant Town Manager report. All right, folks, next meeting is December 16th, 7 p.m., Moose Hill Council Chambers, also on TV.
Before you
followed by
adjourn?
January, what?
Before you adjourn, just a reminder, citizens petitions are due the second Tuesday in January.
Second Tuesday in
25
January.
registered voters.
Citizens
If you like, you can have them come to us and we'll have legal review it to make sure that they are within DRA standards.
which is January 14th.
First of all, that's an adorable picture.
I'll trust you on that one. I just go with the second Tuesday. Says every year that's what it is. Second Tuesday. Doesn't matter the date. Second Tuesday.
All right, and then so the 16th, December 16th, January 6th. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ron. Do I have a second from